Chapter 1440. Even Tianxing Taoist was surprised by the commotion. He looked in the direction of Baiyun Mountain with a scrutinizing and playful gaze. Chu Yang and Tang Jun did the same. Then, they realized that Luo Qingwu's expression was a little strange. "Fellow, bo?" Chu Yang hesitated for a moment before asking. Luo Qingwu let out a long sigh. "It's not just Baiyun Mountain. There's movement in Tianhuang mainland too. It's not a coincidence. The two are connected." Chu Yang and Tang Jun both frowned. Luo Qingwu muttered to herself in her heart, "So this is what Master meant when he said that." "But why?" She snapped out of her reverie and glanced at Chu Yang before looking at Tang Jun silently. She said, "The changes started when martial nephew Tianjin killed Taishu Temple disciple Qin Xingyu." Chu Yang and Tang Jun were both dumbfounded. Both of them were calm and experienced people who could remain calm even in the face of a landslide. Yet, they were also stunned at this moment. They were very familiar with the martial nephew Tianjin that Luo Qingwu mentioned. He was Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation successor disciple, Zhou Yunsong, who was on par with Tang Jun. Although the reason for Zhou Yunsong's killing of Qin Xingyu was unknown and the process was unclear, they were not too surprised by the outcome. Zhou Yunsong was one of the best among Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation successor disciples. He was one of the three most powerful cultivators in terms of combat skills. Currently, there were very few cultivators in the primordial spirit incarnation realm who could be his match, and almost all of them were from the same sect as him. Qin Xingyu possessed the absolute Yin body and was born in the direct lineage of the Taishu Temple. He was publicly recognized as the most outstanding figure among his generation of Taishu Temple cultivators. He might be able to put up a fight against Zhou Yunsong, but not only Zhou Yunsong's fellow disciple Tang Jun, even Chu Yang favored Zhou Yunsong. However, the fact that Zhou Yunsong's killing of Qin Xingyu had caused such a huge commotion was unbelievable to them. After all, whether it was Zhou Yunsong or Qin Xingyu, no matter how powerful their magical powers were, they had their limits. After all, they were only cultivators in the primordial spirit incarnation realm, not experts in the Dharma-ending realm or even higher realms. This was really beyond their expectations. Compared to this, the fact that Qin Xingyu had suddenly fought with Zhou Yunsong, causing the most outstanding cultivator of the younger generation in Taishu Temple to fall just like that seemed rather insignificant. The reason why Qin Xingyu had fought with Zhou Yunsong, and how Zhou Yunsong had killed him, could be discussed later. The outcome of their battle and the drastic change in heaven and earth that had been triggered were the more pressing matters at hand. Chu Yang could not ask directly, so Tang Jun sent a telepathic message to Luo Qingwu. "Little Antmaster, what exactly is going on?" Luo Qingwu said. "The commotion over there is also related to Baiyun Mountain. I'm afraid that there are traces of a plan behind all of this." At this point, Luo Qingwu paused for a moment before continuing. "There's no need to worry. Although the changes are somewhat unexpected, it's still within Master's calculations. It's just that I personally feel that it's a little hard to grasp." At this moment, somewhere in the demon realm of Infinite Mainland, Luo Qingwu's Yin spirit clone was also muttering to herself. "So this is what happened." She looked into the distance, where the broken void told everyone that a huge battle had just taken place. It was a battle between Essence Soul Realm cultivators. Such a huge battle had caused the surroundings of Infinite Mainland to be in a mess. However, compared to the battlefield, what was more eye-catching was that a beam of light shot straight into the sky, piercing through the blue sky and disappearing into the endless void, disappearing without a trace. That beam of light was half black and half white. There was a faint figure in the black half of the beam of light. He had handsome features and was cultured and refined, but his expression was vaguely cold. In the white half of the beam of light, there was a young man hovering in the air. He looked cold and surprised as he stared at the opponent in front of him. It was the second-generation legacy disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, Zhou Yunsong. The person in front of him was naturally Qin Xingyu. However, in the process of fighting earlier on, Qin Xingyu's essence soul had already been completely burned by Zhou Yunsong. However, the sudden appearance of the huge beam of light did not disperse Qin Xingyu's essence soul for the time being. He and Zhou Yunsong looked at each other. In that calm and indifferent gaze, there was a faint, strange color. It seemed to be regret, relief, and joy. There were conflicting emotions in his eyes, but they appeared at the same time. Luo Qingwu looked at Qin Xingyu in silence. Although his brilliance was gradually overshadowed by the legacy of Xianmen Tianzong, it was widely acknowledged that he was the strongest cultivator among the younger generation of Taishu Temple. Excluding the legacy of Xianmen Tianzong, there were only a few cultivators in the essence soul embodiment realm who could be mentioned in the same breath as him. Excluding Shi Xingyun, who was in a special situation, the only one who could defeat Qin Xingyu was Chu Yang, who was currently working together with Luo Qingwu. Even though Xiao Zhen had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few years and had many interactions with Xiao Yan, she still did not dare to say that she was 100% confident. He was the only direct disciple of the current temple master of Taishu Temple, Lin Daohan. At the same time, he was also the strongest cultivator among his generation. Apart from another young cultivator of Taishu Temple named Guoqiaoyang, no one in his generation could be mentioned in the same breath as him. Qin Xingyu undoubtedly had a bright future ahead of him. His rise even made people vaguely see the shadow of Lin Daohan in the past. If nothing unexpected happened, he would definitely become a mainstay of the new generation of Taishu Temple. Since a long time ago, he had been groomed to be the successor of the new temple master. However, such a talented cultivator had fallen at the hands of Zhou Yunsong. Luo Qingwu had witnessed what had happened with her own eyes. Chen Xingyu had suddenly appeared in Infinite Wilderness Land and revealed a piece of news that Zhou Yunsong could not refuse. He had asked to meet Zhou Yunsong alone. Even in Xianmen Tianzong, only a few people knew that Zhou Yunsong had encountered a catastrophe before he was brought back to the mountain by Zhu Yi and Yang Qing in the past. All his neighbors in his hometown had died and he was the only survivor. However, no one knew the culprit. When Zhu Yi, Yang Qing, and the others went back to investigate, they found that everything had changed and it was difficult to determine the truth. This matter had always been the deepest thorn in Zhou Yunsong's heart. For many years, he would search for it every time he left the mountain. Unfortunately, he did not find anything. However, today he suddenly found the shocking truth. I did it. This was the answer that Qin Xingyu gave to Zhou Yunsong. It was not a lie, because he could provide countless details and verify it with Zhou Yunsong's own memories. It was difficult for those who were not involved to know about these things. There was no need to talk about what happened next. Luo Qingwu looked at Qin Xingyu, whose divine soul was about to disappear in the black pillar of light. She felt that she could not see through his thoughts at all. Initially, I thought that the cultivators of Taishu Temple wanted to harm Yun Kong. Master ordered me to look after Yun Song and even had Aunt Xuanli accompanying him to ensure that nothing would go wrong. However, I did not expect that if Qin Xingyu died in Yun Song's hands, such a change would occur. Or, between the two of them, regardless of who lives and who dies, as long as the other party ends their lives, such a situation will occur? Countless questions flashed through Luo Qingwu's mind. But Qin Xingyu was clearly not Yun Song's match. Yet, he dared to go alone and even angered Yun Kong. Such an action is equivalent to suicide. What was the reason that forced him to take such a step? If it was his master, Lin Daohan, who ordered him to go to Taishu Temple, then why did he look like he was completely willing to endure it? That regretful emotion, was it because he could not win against Yun Song, and not because he regretted his own death? Not to mention Luo Qingwu, after Zhou Yunsong's anger gradually subsided, he was also at a loss. He looked at Qin Xingyu, unable to understand what he was thinking. Qin Xingyu obviously had no intention of explaining. At this moment, even if he wanted to, he could not do so. The light shadow formed by the divine soul gradually dissipated, and on the face that was about to disappear, a strange smile appeared. Zhou Yunsong frowned, his attention fell on the pillar of light that enveloped him and Qin Xingyu. Now, it seemed that the key to the problem was here. As soon as the pillar of light enveloped him, Zhou Yunsong already felt that he could not break free even with his divine sense and dharma power. A beam of light that was half black and half white shot into the sky. Other than where Zhou Yunsong and Qin Xingyu were in the vast land of Tianhuang, at the same time, In the vast land of the Divine Continent, the clouds around White Cloud Mountain had all dispersed, and a huge beam of light shot into the sky. That pillar of light was also half black and half white, exactly the same as the one that enveloped Zhou Yunsong in the vast land of Infinite Wasteland. On the top of White Cloud Mountain, Kuang Heng and other elders of Taishu Temple stood around the black and white pillar of light, looking slightly excited. Although Taoist Tianxing had just caused a ruckus, the people of the Taishu Temple were all in high spirits. The previous chaos didn't seem so important anymore. Tao Master Qing Ning let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Uncle Tai's deduction is correct. Our Dharma access has worked." Kuang Heng said, "It's still too early to say. We've only taken the first step. Whether we'll succeed or not is still unknown. It's hard to predict what will happen next, so we can't relax." Everyone around nodded. Kuang Heng looked at the black and white pillar of light and then turned to look at a cold woman beside him. It was Tao Master Yun, also the highest elder of Taishu Temple. Tao Master Yuan nodded and did not speak. He used one hand to pinch the Dharma axis, changing it continuously, and the other hand raised a talisman. The talisman flew up and fell into the black and white pillar of light. Suddenly, an image of a person appeared in the light, swaying and faintly discernible. Two pillars of light rose in the boundless world, shaking the heavenly yuan as if they were leading to the endless void. Then, faint streams of light flashed between heaven and earth. It was the radiance of the Great Way, which came from the Spirit Sea. At this moment, the Spirit Sea, which was closely connected to the boundless world, seemed to be closer. The barrier between it and the creation world became much thinner, as if the two worlds were about to overlap. Chapter 1441. On White Cloud Mountain, Kuang Heng stared at the black and white light pillar and kept changing his hand seals. Beside him, Tao Master Qingning and the others did the same. Tao Master Yuan waved her sleeve and a round ancient mirror appeared in her arms. The ancient mirror was only a spirit-nurturing grade Dharma treasure. However, after the mirror light shot out and merged with the black and white light pillar, the vague figure in the light pillar suddenly became clear. It was an extremely handsome, flawless man. He looked calm and had a noble temperament. He was like the lonely moon in the sky, cold and lonely. There was a pattern that looked like a full moon between his eyebrows. It was constantly changing, showing the changes of the moon and the moon. Other than Tao Master Yuan, who was holding the mirror, the others bowed to the man silently with Kuang Heng as their leader. The man's silhouette gradually disappeared into the black and white pillar of light. Streams of light soared into the sky and merged into the void. At the same time, a similar scene was happening on Infinite Mainland. Chen Xingyu's figure had completely disappeared, and Zhou Yunsong also felt that his body was involuntarily being pulled up by the half-black and half-white light pillar, and it was difficult to stop it. Seeing this, Luo Qingwu's in-spirit doppelganger turned to look at Xianli and said, "Aunt Xianli, the sword that Master prepared for you is going to come in handy now." She paused for a moment and continued, "However, it should only take one sword." Xianli looked up at the end of the black and white light pillar. Her usually cold and indifferent expression changed slightly, as if she was thinking about something. Upon hearing this, she retracted her gaze and looked straight at Luo Qingwu. Luo Qingwu nodded and said, "Master said that if something really happens, we only need to ensure Marshal Nephew Tianjin's safety. We don't need to care about anything else." She said softly, "Although I don't know if the change in front of us is within Master's expectations, since he said so, let's deal with it by not changing." Luo Qingwu was not someone who did not know how to adapt. In fact, she was very good at adapting to changing circumstances, but she never thought that she was clever. Lin Feng's message vaguely made her feel that there was something more to it. Therefore, although the current development was somewhat unexpected, she still decided to strictly follow Lin Feng's instructions. When Xianli heard this, she didn't say anything. She raised her hand and a long sword appeared in her hand. As she raised her sword, the entire Great Thousand World was filled with wails. The evil energy of heaven and earth gathered together to form a terrifying sword edge that could destroy the world. Then, Xianli swung her sword and a fierce sword light suddenly rose to the sky and slashed at the black and white light pillar. The black and white pillar of light trembled as if it was about to collapse. However, affected by this, water suddenly gushed out from the end of the black and white light pillar. It was silent and seemed to have no color. It was neither black nor white, and it was hard to describe. The water looked ordinary, but it seemed to be the most terrifying existence in the world. Not only did it destroy all life, but it also seemed to be able to destroy the creation of the world. Everything in the world, including the creation of the world itself, was about to be destroyed. All spiritual energy and all principles were destroyed. When Luo Qingwu saw it, she blurted out, "The water of the Dead Sea." Although she didn't see it with her own eyes, she knew that it was one of the 7 seas of heaven origin, the most mysterious Dead Sea. Xianli, who was beside her, had benefited from the water of the Dead Sea. Xianli's eyes burst out with an astonishing brilliance at this moment. It was extremely dazzling. Just her gaze alone was enough to cause the void to collapse. The terrifying sword light and the invisible and colorless water intertwined in the world, causing the boundaries of the Great Thousand World to completely shatter and become distorted. Luo Qingwu called out, "Aunt Xianli!" Xianli gently furrowed her brows, but in the end she restrained herself and did not attack again. The dissipated black and white light pillar shook in the world and then reformed. It was like a heavenly pillar that shot up to the sky. The terrifying water of the Dead Sea, which seemed to be able to turn everything into nothingness, also disappeared at this moment, as if it had never appeared. All that was left was the shattered void of the world, proving that a terrifying collision that could destroy heaven and earth had once taken place here. And because of this, Zhou Yunsong regained his freedom. He took the opportunity to escape from the black and white light pillar and flew all the way to Xianli and Luo Qingwu's side. His expression was complicated, and he even forgot to greet Xianli and Luo Qingwu. He was usually cold and indifferent, but at this moment, his expression was a little sluggish. He looked at the black and white light pillar that had disappeared into the void. Thousands of thoughts appeared in his mind, and there seemed to be countless intertwining images in his mind, flashing non-stop. Xianli's eyes were fixed on the end of the black and white light pillar, and there seemed to be a little strange in her eyes. It was not hostile, but it was also extremely complicated and indescribable. Luo Qingwu glanced at Zhou Yunsong and sighed inwardly. She also looked at the void and said thoughtfully, "Master, did I do the right thing?" Behind them, the space crack opened, and Han Yang, Ying Rosa, Tan Yunqing, and the others arrived one after another. They were shocked by the scene in front of them. On White Cloud Mountain in the Divine Land, Kuang Heng and the others seemed to feel the changes in the infinite wilderness through the black and white light pillar in front of them. Kuang Heng said in a low voice, "The most difficult part is over. Now there should be no external forces to disturb us. Let's just wait and see if the situation develops as we expected." There was some worry in Dao Master Qingning's eyes. Is it because Lin Feng is not here and the sky-crushing sword has reached its limit? Or do they have other plans? Kuang Heng's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He said indifferently, "Either way is fine. At this time, we can only go on the original path. No matter what the result is, it will not be worse than now. It is always a good thing that we can carry out our own plan. Even if they have other plans, we will have to fight with brute force in the end." Dao Master Qingning nodded and said no more. Dao Master Yu Yuan was still indifferent, and his eyes were cold. His attention was always on the black and white light pillar. At this moment, the boundaries of the boundless world were constantly shaking, and even the spirit sea that was closely connected to the boundless world was shaking. But then, all the creatures in the boundless creation realm suddenly felt a sense of extreme danger. No matter where they were, no matter how high their cultivation was, from experts in the primordial soul realm to experts in the Dharma ending realm, to ordinary people, they all felt a sense of fear deep in their hearts. Even the beasts without much intelligence, as well as the plants and trees, trembled in fear. The mountains, the sun, the moon, the rivers, the lakes, the seas, everything in the world, whether they had intelligence or not, whether they were alive or not, seemed to come alive at this moment, giving rise to a feeling of fear. The feeling of fear enveloped the entire boundless world, as if it was everywhere. Around the boundless world, in the endless void, in the worlds of the heavens, in the foreign space, everything had the same feeling. Even the dragon clan in the mysterious sea, the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators in the Ying Sea, and all the creatures in the void battlefield could feel the fear that seemed to rise from the depths of their souls. In the overlapping boundless world and the spirit sea, there seemed to be a third world vaguely appearing. This world, like the world of the spirit sea, was closely attached to the boundless creation realm. There was no gap, and they were closely interdependent. At this moment, the barriers between the subjugation world, the boundless creation realm, and the spirit sea gradually disappeared, as if they were about to completely merge together. However, that world was silent and dead. In the silence, it seemed to contain the greatest horror in the world. Streams of light flashed continuously, and the mournful wails of the great Tao of heaven and earth had disappeared. It became softer, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it became even darker. However, this world didn't really merge with the boundless creation realm. In the spirit sea, the Haotian mirror that was in a stalemate with the Book of Destruction suddenly shone brightly. The light that was everywhere actually gathered into a single line. That line of light was so dazzling that it seemed as if everything in the world had disappeared, leaving only this line of light. Everyone's gaze was attracted by this line of light. At this moment, the top strong practitioners of the heaven primordial world were gathered in the spirit sea. Although they couldn't feel the tremors of the boundless world, they could clearly feel the minute changes in the spirit sea. Sun Mirage Yudu, the monkey, the Yuan Dragon King, the king of the underworld, and even the enchantress, who had been severely injured and suppressed by Lin Feng, were all shaken. This feeling, could it be the Dead Sea? The silent world that was so closely merged with the spirit sea and the boundless creation realm was the most mysterious of the 7 seas of heaven primordial world, the Dead Sea. The beam of light from the Haotian mirror seemed to open up a path for the Dead Sea, and the vast water of the Dead Sea surged out from it. The light of the great Tao of heaven and earth in the spirit sea and the meridians all dimmed at this moment. The world sank into an unprecedented tremor. For an instant, everyone felt as if they were about to be expelled from the spirit sea. Even Lin Feng's process of refining the spirit sea through the primordial golden lamp was interrupted by the tremor. Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment. Sun Mirage Yudu and the Yuan Dragon King looked at each other subconsciously. Does the Taishu Temple want to go their separate ways? In the whole world, the spirit sea was the only place that could isolate the Dead Sea. Here, even the Dharma-ending calamity and the collapse of the great Tao couldn't be executed. As the sea of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the spirit sea and the Dead Sea, which was the end of all living things, were extreme opposites. If the Dead Sea flowed into the spirit sea, the result would be unimaginable. This was something that everyone was well aware of, but who would have thought that this scene was actually happening? The spirit sea and the spirit sea are isolated, and the cultivators of the Taishu Temple outside can't possibly know whether Tai and the rest have the upper hand or not, so why would they use such a method to injure each other? Unless this was their plan from the start, but that's obviously impossible. Countless guesses appeared in the king of the underworld's mind. Or do they have the ability to contact their fellow sect members outside the spirit sea? If that's not the case, what are they planning? The Dead Sea, the Dead Sea, the Dead Sea. The king of the underworld's mind trembled slightly, and shock also appeared on his face. Meanwhile, Lin Feng looked at this scene and the world of the spirit sea that looked like it was about to overturn rivers and seas. His gaze was solemn, and he seemed to be thinking about something. No matter what, the result wouldn't be any worse than the current situation. According to the current trend, there was a 90% chance that the spirit sea would become Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong's possession. Looking at this scene, Sun Huan, Yudu, King Yuan Dragon, and the rest sank into silence. They seemed to have tacitly agreed with Taishu Temple's actions. Only Lin Feng stared at the mirror light of the Haotian mirror. He stared at the actual focal point of the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea with a burning gaze. An image faintly appeared in Lin Feng's consciousness. Under the guidance of the Haotian mirror's radiance and the bizarre black and white light pillar, it seemed to form a path of light that extended far into the depths of the Dead Sea. This path of light was so mysterious and wonderful. It passed through the Dead Sea, which was insoluble in all things. Although it swayed and was faintly discernible, it never dissipated. Just like that, it continued to extend into the distance. After this path of light appeared, the Spirit Sea was still trembling violently, clashing intensely with the power of the Dead Sea, causing the entire world of the Spirit Sea to be in utter chaos. However, amidst this chaos, there seemed to be a kind of wonderful balance. In the Spirit Sea, streams of light of the great path of light were continuously broken and then regenerated. Light and dark intersected, changing continuously. In the process of the birth and death of the great path of light, it was as if one could see the cycle of birth and death of layers and layers of worlds. However, during this process, the world of the Spirit Sea was still trembling non-stop. The water in the giant golden lake had already become sparse, but at this moment, it was still tumbling non-stop. Golden cracks spread along the lakeside in all directions, causing the world with the giant golden lake as the center to seem as if it was about to completely shatter. At this moment, the Spirit Sea was on the verge of being torn apart again. At this moment, this process also came to a slight stop. It had also fallen into a dangerous and fragile state of balance. At the center of the lake, Xianmen Tianzong and the others who were sitting on the primordial golden lamp could not sit still at this moment. At this moment, the giant whirlpool where the primordial golden lamp was located had already calmed down, and they had returned to the surface of the lake. The golden lake continued to shake, almost causing the people on the primordial golden lamp to lose their footing. At this moment, all three of Lin Feng's doppelgangers had already stood up. His process of refining the Spirit Sea had also temporarily stopped due to the drastic changes in the world at this moment. On the other side, the Haotian mirror was distracted. In the process of competing with the Book of Destruction, it immediately gained the upper hand. The aura of destruction continuously contaminated one mirror after another, and in an instant, it was about to cover the entire void. Faced with the pressure from the Book of Destruction, the Haotian mirror could only defend passively at this moment. The Taishu engraving on the back of Lin Daohan's hand flashed as he conjured a Dharma seal that changed continuously. One after another, streams of spiritual sense and Dharma power were sent into the Haotian mirror. At this moment, the countless Haotian mirrors in the void seemed to have merged into one. At the same time that the condensed light shot towards the Dead Sea, the treasured mirror itself seemed to be enveloped in a misty light, making it hard for people to see clearly. A large amount of aura of destruction stimulated by the Book of Destruction surrounded the Haotian mirror and continuously contaminated the light around the treasured mirror. However, the people of the Taishu Temple seemed to ignore this. The Taishu Nine Heavens Imperial Court appeared once again, and everyone's Dharma power was gathered there. The Taiwan supremacy was even more focused. He closed his eyes and stared at the crack in the Dead Sea in the void. What surprised everyone was that Lin Feng didn't seem to have any intention of stopping the people of the Taishu Temple who were using the Haotian mirror to connect the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea. Although the Book of Destruction had gained the upper hand, Lin Feng himself didn't attack. He stared at the crack in the Dead Sea for a while, then suddenly laughed. He turned his head and looked around. His gaze swept across Sun Mirage, Yudu, the Yuanlong King, and the King of the Underworld. "Stop looking. Clear the area, clear the area." Sun Mirage, Yudu, and the other strong practitioners felt a chill in their hearts when they heard this. Before they could think further, Lin Feng's figure flashed and appeared in front of the King of the Underworld. He stretched out his finger and pointed at the King of the Underworld. A black and a white light intertwined at the tip of his finger, displaying the cycle of creation, life, and destruction, and the true meaning of eternity. The mysterious and overbearing eternal light of calamity continuously broke through the barrier of magic power and the restrictions in front of the King of the Underworld. Life and death rotated in the King of the Underworld's eyes. Black and white alternated as he looked at Lin Feng quietly. At that moment, he already had the intention to retreat. The Taishu Temple directed the Dead Sea to pour into the Spirit Sea, harming others without benefiting themselves. While interrupting Lin Feng's refinement of the Spirit Sea, it also destroyed the hope of the others. Of course, this was actually a good thing for the people who were in a disadvantageous situation. Now that things had come to this, the king of the underworld felt that there was no meaning and gain if he continued to stay. It was time for him to seek retreat. Although there was no gain, Shenmen Tianzong couldn't get the Spirit Sea. Maintaining the status quo was already a great gain. Therefore, when the king of the underworld faced Lin Feng's eternal light of calamity, he did nothing but defend himself. Lin Feng's eyebrows raised, the expression on his face was like a smile that wasn't a smile. You want to take one of my attacks head-on and then use the death substitution rebirth ritual set up in other places to be reborn, thereby pulling away from me in exchange for a chance to escape? That's a good idea, but you should also know that the death substitution rebirth ritual isn't omnipotent. You're the emperor of the underworld, the top expert in this area, but it's useless against me. You're just closing your eyes and waiting for death. As he spoke, the mysterious and overbearing eternal light of calamity at the tip of Lin Feng's finger changed shape. It rapidly collapsed and compressed, then turned into Lin Feng's Dao fruit. That profound point was hard to describe, but it caused everything in the surroundings to gather towards it. It wasn't just the compression of space, and it wasn't the movement of tangible objects. Everything around that point matter, spiritual qi, space, time, tangible life, intangible spiritual qi, and the thousands of brilliant great Daos between heaven and earth was drawn toward that point. Seeing this, the king of the underworld's expression changed slightly. He immediately knew that what Lin Feng said was true. He could clearly feel that if he was hit by Lin Feng's finger, he would really be dead. Even with his understanding of the underworld Tao of life and death, it would be difficult for him to be reborn. This death would be eternal, and he would truly fall. The king of the underworld let out a long sigh, and the black light around him suddenly brightened. The black light, however, gave off a bright and dazzling feeling. It was filled with absurd yet profound concepts, causing the emperor of the underworld's figure to rapidly retreat, no longer daring to take Lin Feng's finger head-on. Without a sound, the black radiance collapsed like a delicate porcelain that had been shattered. The space twisted and shattered, and an ancient scroll appeared within it. Then, from the middle, it was torn apart. It was as if a world of creation had been completely destroyed and collapsed. Everyone at the scene was shocked. A suppressed growl rang out in the void, and a figure of light fled into the distance. After this move, Lin Feng didn't continue. Instead, he smiled and said, "Little Lin, I'll leave it to you." On the primordial golden lamp, Wang Lin's gaze was calm. He nodded and flew out of the protection of the heaven-covering umbrella, chasing in the direction where the king of the underworld had disappeared. At that moment, the others couldn't care about Wang Lin anymore. That was because after Lin Feng heavily injured the king of the underworld with one move, he turned around and flew to the front of Sun Mirage Yudu. With a punch, he forced him back, and with a flash, he appeared in front of the Yuan Dragon King. Terror rose in the Yuan Dragon King's heart, and he saw Lin Feng smiling at him. "Do you know what it means to clear the place? It means that there's nothing for you guys to do here anymore." As he said that, Lin Feng's right index and middle fingers formed a sword. Sword light flashed at his fingertips, and he stabbed at the Yuan Dragon King. As the Yuan Dragon King gave a long howl, the treasure light and auspicious clouds around him crumbled. They were sliced apart by Lin Feng's sword, and the sword slashed at his body. The void seemed to tremble, and everyone could clearly see a terrifying sword light piercing through the Yuan Dragon King's body. Chapter 1443. The terrifying sword light transformed into tens of thousands of techniques and fought against each other with equal harshness. It broke through tens of thousands of techniques and forcefully shattered the protective light around Yuan Dragon King's body. Then, the terrifying sword light pierced through Yuan Dragon King's huge body. The sword light spread out like a sword that could cut through the sky, piercing into the huge dragon body that spanned between heaven and earth. In an instant, dragon scales and dragon blood splattered everywhere. Yuan Dragon King kept roaring in anger, but he could not suppress his weakness. He had already been seriously injured by Lin Feng before, and now that he was struck by this sword, he could no longer hold on. He felt that all the strength in his body was draining away along with his blood. Heaven and earth kept shaking. Not only was the void of the Spirit Sea affected, but even the vast thousand realms that were closely connected to the Spirit Sea were also shaking and affected. The true form of a demon in the Dharma-ending realm was already closely connected to the vast thousand realms. Once it was destroyed, it would affect the creation of the vast thousand realms. Yuan Dragon King, who had already begun his tribulation, was even more closely connected to the vast thousand realms. Now that he was injured, even though he was in the Spirit Sea, it caused a huge commotion. The terrifying sword light kept flashing and spreading around the wound, further tearing Yuan Dragon King's body apart. Yuan Dragon King struggled, and golden light shone all over his body as he tried to suppress Lin Feng's sword light and sword intent. However, it was all in vain. He was also angered, so he simply ignored Lin Feng's sword light. Instead, he turned his head, opened his mouth, and spat out beams of golden light at Lin Feng. As the beams of golden light shot out, they seemed to vaguely turn into rivers. Then, all rivers returned to the sea, turning into a golden ocean that flooded toward Lin Feng. Not to mention Lin Feng, who was right in front of them, even the others could clearly feel the terrifying power in this golden ocean. Wherever the golden ocean passed, it destroyed everything. It surged down with unstoppable force. For a split second, the crowd even vaguely felt the terror of the Dead Sea. Nirvana was a terrifying power that turned everything into nothingness. But in the face of this power, Lin Feng's expression didn't change. Another Dao fruit appeared in front of him. When that profound point appeared, the golden sea violently fluctuated. Then, the vast sea once again divided into thin streams, and then continued to disintegrate until it finally disappeared. Streaks of faint golden radiance swam in the void, and then were drawn by that point, plunging into it, never to be seen again. At the same time, Lin Feng used his finger as a sword and gently waved it. The black and white divine light of creation emerged and triggered a deafening sound of the great way in the void of the spiritual sea. It was as if gods were awakening one after another. A vast power was added to Lin Feng's sword light. As it flowed, it became the sharpest point on the blade. Then, with a twist of the sword light, the huge body of the Yuan Dragon King was split in half. The current leader of the Dragon Clan was forcibly cut in half at the waist by Lin Feng's sword. In everyone's ears, it was as if the power of the domain of creation in the boundless world was continuously crumbling. It was as if a mournful scar had been slashed open in heaven and earth. Due to the connection between their true forms and the boundless world, Sun Mirage, Yudu, and the monkey, who were also in the tribulation period, could even faintly feel their bodies trembling. After that sword, even the howls of the Yuan Dragon King, who only had half of his body left, became softer. However, he was truly proud and tenacious. Even though he was so heavily injured that his demon soul was feeling dizzy, he still refused to admit defeat. As he roared, the scales on the back half of his body opened and closed continuously, and his huge dragon tail swung. The strong qi and blood within it also trembled continuously. It looked weak and broken, but it was like a true dragon that danced and circled in the void. This half of the dragon body trembled as if it was about to explode. It was like a massive chaos in the universe that was about to open up a whole new world. It was also like a huge world that was about to be completely destroyed. The demon power, qi, and blood that Yuan Dragon King had cultivated for countless years burst forth in a resolute manner without any reservation. Lin Feng laughed softly. "Don't be so wasteful." As he said that, he stretched out his palm and grabbed the half of Yuan Dragon King's body that was about to explode. In the center of Lin Feng's palm, a taiji diagram spiraled continuously. After a short moment of stillness, it suddenly reversed. The powerful force that burst forth instantly suppressed Yuan Dragon King's intention to detonate half of his body as an attack. Even though his body was broken, Yuan Dragon King, who could still communicate with the consciousness of the other half of his body, immediately felt the connection between him and the other half of his body weakening continuously. The other half of the body was grabbed by Lin Feng, and it instantly calmed down as if it had lost its vitality. The restless power was instantly suppressed by Lin Feng, and it couldn't continue to wreak havoc. The essence and demon power that seemed like they were about to explode were still preserved in this half of the body. They couldn't burst forth and were all sealed there. Lin Feng looked at Yuan Dragon King and shook his head. You really shouldn't have come out of the mysterious sea. Mirage Sun Yudu didn't dare to be careless. He immediately executed his Yudu Profound Flower to block it. Lin Feng broke the Yudu Profound Flower with one punch, and with a light tap of his finger, an eternal calamity light shot down. Mirage Sun Yudu's expression was cold. He executed the broken horn of Yu Huang's celestial sea and placed a purple barrier in front of him to block Lin Feng's eternal calamity light. Lin Feng tapped his finger gently, and that eternal calamity light stopped in its tracks. It hid itself in the surrounding essence and transformed into a Dao fruit. When this Dao fruit appeared, it immediately sucked on the broken horn as though it was going to swallow it up. Mirage Sun Yudu's expression changed, and at this moment, Lin Feng's other hand changed from a fist to a palm. He used the power of the Great Thousand to cover Mirage Sun Yudu's head as though he was forcing him to make a choice. Duo! Mirage Sun Yudu first blocked Lin Feng's palm that was pressing down. He then took a look at the broken horn and shook his head. Above his head, the void trembled continuously, and a strange gate appeared. The gate opened, and starlight poured out from within. It was the last gate of the sixth gate of Star Sea. Before this, one of the gate of Star Sea was in the hands of the dragon race, one in the hands of the enchantress, one in the hands of the primordial devil ape race, one in the hands of Golden Rock Great Sage, and one in the hands of White Tiger Great Sage. All of these gate of Star Sea had fallen into Lin Feng's hands. Not long ago, he had just seized Yuan Long King's gate of Star Sea. Now, the last gate of Star Sea finally appeared in front of him. Lin Feng had always suspected that as the Yudu race that had controlled all the gates of Star Sea in the past, they should have at least left one for him to control, even though the gates of Star Sea had been scattered due to the previous battle. This conjecture was verified today. Mirage Sun Yudu's gaze was extremely solemn. Even the gazes of the others became extremely complicated. Putting aside the Spirit Sea, the gathering of the six gates of Star Sea meant that Star Sea, one of the seven seas of heavenly primordial spirit, was completely under Lin Feng's control. Even if the Spirit Sea was completely sealed now, Lin Feng would still be the biggest winner. His gains were so huge that it would drive the others crazy. Mirage Sun Yudu didn't have the heart to help this powerful opponent in front of him, but he had no other choice. Between terrible and even worse, he could only choose the former. As the gate of Star Sea trembled, the starlight that rushed out from the gate enveloped the gate itself. Next, that huge star trembled violently, and in an instant, an extremely powerful force burst forth. The powerful explosive force didn't aim at Lin Feng's Dao fruit. Mirage Sun Yudu knew that it was a meaningless waste. This power surged into the broken horn itself. In the next instant, the purple light screen that had been swept up by Lin Feng's Dao fruit exploded and shattered. Mirage Sun Yudu successfully took back that broken horn, but on the other side, Lin Feng opened his palm, and the last gate of Star Sea was in his hands. After the war between the two worlds ended 4,000 years ago, the six gates of Star Sea that had been scattered everywhere had gathered once again. The new master of Star Sea had been established. Chapter 1444. Mirage Sun Yudu took the initiative to drop his gate of Sea of Stars. With his cultivation, the power that burst forth from the gate of Sea of Stars was even stronger than what had happened to Yuan Long King. With this move, he was finally able to stagger backwards, and with a flip of his palm, Lin Feng grabbed the Star Sea gate in his hand. When Mirage Sun Yudu saw this sight, he felt his heart bleeding. The importance of the Sea of Stars to the demon race surpassed that of human cultivators. Other than the ancient epic, It had always been the residence of the sacred emperors of the demon race. Yudu race returned to the boundless world, so they naturally hoped to gather the 6 gates of Sea of Stars and rule over the ancient desolate Sea of Stars. But right now, Mirage Sun Yudu could only watch as all 6 gates of Sea of Stars fell into Lin Feng's hands. He was even forced to give up the last one. No matter how steady Mirage Sun Yudu's frame of mind was, he still felt dizzy. However, he wasn't an ordinary person after all. Giving up the gate of Sea of Stars was a decision he had made. It wasn't easy for him to get this chance, so he couldn't wallow in self-pity and waste it. If that happened, the sacrifice of the gate of Sea of Stars would be for naught. After putting away the broken horn, Mirage Sun Yudu quickly retreated. His demon power swept up Shixing Yudu, Yunxing Yudu, and the rest of his race to escape. However, Lin Feng didn't have the intention to stop. He laughed and took a step forward. He chased after Mirage Sun Yudu and punched him again. Mirage Sun Yudu was helpless and could only turn around to block. He then saw Lin Feng's punch moving the stars in the sky and changing the universe. Above his head, 6 star sea gates suddenly lined up in a row and then opened at the same time. In the past, he would need a long time to refine the gates of Sea of Stars before he could use them and control them freely. However, with Lin Feng's current cultivation, he didn't need much effort. Especially when the 6 gates were gathered together, they naturally resonated and connected with each other. This allowed Lin Feng to succeed in an instant. The 6 starry ocean gates opened at the same time. Starlight kept flashing inside the gates, as if a meteor shower had broken out that affected the entire star ocean. The trajectories of these meteors constantly changed in the void, and the powerful energy was added to Lin Feng's punch. They complemented each other, and it almost had the power to change the world and overturn the universe. Within the area enveloped by the fist force, Mirage Sun Yudu, who was escaping far away, suddenly discovered that his speed had slowed down. He even faintly showed signs of retreating in the direction where Lin Feng was. Phantom Sun Yudu frowned tightly, and he executed that broken horn again helplessly. Layers of purple light fell down to block in front of him. The powerful punch that revolved the stars in the sky and the sea of stars in the universe forcefully shattered the purple light curtain. Then, in front of Lin Feng's fist, the Dao fruit appeared once again. It was like the beginning of all things, but also like the end of all things, merging into one. It was as if everything was contained within it. Everything could be created and transformed, and everything could be annihilated here. It wasn't just the distortion of space. At this point, the concept of time had also been lost. There was no past, no future. Everything in the world, be it formless or formless, material or immaterial, seemed to have been created here and ended here. Affected by Lin Feng's Dao fruit, even the light on that broken horn gradually dimmed. Lin Feng put away the Dao fruit and changed his fist into a palm. The great pole diagram in the center of his palm reversed, and he grabbed the broken horn between his 5 fingers. The broken horn trembled as though it wanted to break free from Lin Feng's palm. However, Lin Feng held it firmly, making it hard for it to escape. Suppressing this broken horn that came from Yu Huang's celestial sea, Lin Feng stopped in his footsteps. However, he still shot out an eternal calamity light to break through Mirage Sun Yudu's Yudu profound flower, severely injuring him. Mirage Sun Yudu roared into the sky. He had abandoned the gate of Star Ocean to protect himself and that broken horn, but in the end he still couldn't get what he wanted. Even though the water of the Dead Sea flowed back into the Spirit Sea and interrupted Lin Feng's refinement of the Spirit Sea, his Yudu race still suffered heavy losses. If everyone had retreated, no one would have been able to refine the Spirit Sea. Mirage Sun Yudu could accept this result. After all, among everyone present, the person who could control the Spirit Sea the most was Lin Feng. But now, even if they all retreated, the losses of Yudu race were already extremely huge, far surpassing the limits of what Mirage Sun Yudu could endure. However, what made Mirage Sun Yudu's heart bleed even more was that no matter how furious he was, he still had to endure it and quickly escape. Otherwise, Yuan Long King and the Enchantress would be his role models. Mirage Sun Yudu himself wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't only represent himself. What's more, if he died here, Shixing Yudu, Jing Yen Yudu, Yun Xing Yudu, and all the other strong practitioners of Yudu might be lost here. To the Yudu race, this was an unbearable loss. With an angry roar, Mirage Sun Yu didn't even turn his head back. He flew into the distance and left the region where the huge golden lake was. Lin Feng looked in the direction they left and smiled. He grabbed the broken horn in his hand and stood on the spot. The Taiji diagram in the heart of his palm circulated in the opposite direction to suppress the restlessness of the broken horn. His other hand formed a strange spell and he wrote in the air, forming a few profound diagrams. These profound diagrams flashed with a faint glow and landed on the broken horn like runes. As more and more runes landed, the restlessness of the broken horn gradually calmed down. Lin Feng smiled and put away the broken horn as well. In the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court, everyone in Taishu Temple looked at Lin Feng, who had swept through all 4 directions and almost wiped out everyone else. Their expressions became grim. Clearly, the ones who pose the greatest threat to him are the people of the Clear Sky Mirror and the Void Temple, but Lin Feng has adopted a nearly laissez-faire attitude. This abnormal action naturally made Lord Tai-1 and the others feel uneasy in their hearts. As if he could feel the gazes of everyone in Taishu Temple, Lin Feng turned his gaze over and looked at them. His eyes were as deep as the sea, making it hard for people to see his depth. However, that faint smile at the corner of his mouth made everyone in Taishu Temple feel uneasy. After taking a look at the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court, Lin Feng retracted his gaze and looked around. He said with a smile, "There's no meaning for Dao friend to continue wasting time with me. You and I have to settle things and we'll talk about it later. Why waste your energy now?" Merging into the void, the eastern glazed world that seemed to have disappeared reappeared. The transparent and clear glazed light had become extremely thin at this time, as if it would completely shatter at any time. A low Buddhist chant sounded out from within the Vairocana world of light in the east, and then the radiance gradually dispersed, leaving behind only the enormous sky-split pagoda in the sky. On the sky-split pagoda, the future Vairocana Buddha with 48,000 arms sat upright, and his myriad of arms formed seals together. He glanced at Lin Feng, shook his head slowly and closed his eyes. He still sat upright on the towering pagoda, silent and motionless, as if he had died. The future glazed Buddha seemed to completely turn a blind eye to the drastic changes that were happening in the Spirit Sea because of the Dead Sea. He was indifferent, but Lin Feng, Lord Tai, and the others were not surprised by this. After sweeping away and suppressing the enemies in front of him, Lin Feng put his hands behind his back and stood in the void. The aura that he gave off was profound and unfathomable. It was like his Tao fruit, hard to fathom, hard to describe, and difficult to measure. Time and space seemed to have lost their meaning in front of him. Although everyone could clearly see him standing there with their naked eyes, in everyone's perception, Lin Feng seemed to be everywhere, existing in all the time and space in the world. Lin Feng looked around and laughed softly. Then, with him as the center, a powerful aura started to spread and sweep in all directions. The countless figures that were everywhere seemed to be trembling at this moment, overlapping and resonating, causing the entire world of the Spirit Sea to shake. The radiance of the great Tao in heaven and earth pulsed nonstop. It was as if there was light rising from the void and spreading in all directions, lighting up every corner of the Spirit Sea. The radiance lit up and the airflow expanded like surging waves, crashing against Sun Mirage Yudu, who was still flying far away, making him not dare to stop. Sun Mirage Yudu gave a low growl, and black light surged all over his body. He forcefully withstood the terrifying power of the boundary and shook the Spirit Sea. In the huge golden lake, the black light and runes in the part of the lake that he had occupied completely dissipated. Sun Mirage Yudu and the others broke through the void and were shaken out of the Spirit Sea. Under the light, the figures of Golden Cicada and Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, who were fleeing far away, were also revealed. They could no longer hide. As time and space twisted, they seemed to be right in front of Lin Feng and the others. After the enchantress was suppressed by Lin Feng, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage had already fled quickly, not daring to stay for a moment. Golden Cicada had clearly received a notice from the future star-glazed Buddha Master to stay as far away from the huge golden lake as possible. But just being shown by the light and the rush of the airwaves caused the two great demons to tremble violently. Golden Cicada was fine. He had only revealed his tracks. The heavenly wolf great sage let out a miserable howl and revealed his true form. His dark body, which was the size of a small hill, seemed to have turned red at this moment. He was covered in blood from head to toe. A large number of tiny beads of blood seeped out of his pores and spread all over his body, covering it completely. Lin Feng smiled gently and turned to look at the monkey. An eye for an eye and an eye for an eye. The monkey looked at the silent future star-glazed Buddha Master, who had his eyes closed. Then, his gaze turned to Golden Cicada's exposed figure. He looked up to the sky and bared his teeth in laughter. With a somersault, he chased after Golden Cicada. Lin Feng then smiled at Yu Hongyan. Hongyan, I'll leave that wolf to you. Yu Hongyan got up and cupped his fists at Lin Feng. Then, he flipped out of the protection of the heaven-covering umbrella and chased after Heavenly Wolf Great Sage. Future star-glazed Buddha Master and the people of Taishu Temple watched this scene in silence. Lin Feng's gaze fell on the crack of the Dead Sea again. As time passed, after a long while, he smiled. It's about time. With that, his figure flashed and he once again appeared in front of the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace. Under the impact of the violent power, everyone in Taishu Temple was affected, except for Lord Tai, who was activating the Haotian mirror. I said it was to clear the area. Chapter 1445. Lin Feng extended both his hands forward. Wisps of purple smoke floated around his palms. There were a large number of divine talismans moving up and down, shaking the surroundings. He put his palms together and thrust them into the light of the 9 heavens of Taishu Palace. Fate Creation Boy held the Book of Annihilation. As the pages flipped, streams of air rushed out and continued to press on the Haotian mirror. As a result, the people of the Great Void Temple could only watch as Lin Feng's hands slowly spread apart. With this action of his, it was as if a large hole had been torn open in the Great Void 9 Heavens Imperial Court. A large crack appeared and continuously split apart towards the two sides. Lin Feng smiled. As the purple smoke and clouds continued to undulate, the 9 heavens of Taishu Palace began to shake. At the edge of his fingertips, the mysterious and overbearing light flowed bit by bit and instantly passed through the 9 heavens of Taishu Palace. Wherever the light passed, the central heavenly gate, which was the foundation of the 9 heavens of Taishu Palace, was the first to close and disappear without warning. It was as if all exits had been cut off. In the second layer of the celestial imperial court, the bright stars shone brightly. The divine light that was formed by the starlight was extinguished. Even those bright stars dimmed and then disappeared. It was as if they had silently perished in the void of the universe. In the third level of the Heaven Imperial Court, the terrifying crack that flashed with white light also closed and disappeared at this moment. It was formed by the power of the boundaries of the two worlds pressing towards the center. In the fourth layer of the palace, the vast vault of heaven that was like a huge palm covering the universe collapsed with a loud bang. In the fifth layer of the palace, the golden brontosaurus that were shuttling back and forth were all destroyed and turned into nothingness in an instant. Not even an electric spark could be seen. And the clear sky celestial city that appeared in the sixth layer of the palace, protected by the white clouds and golden light, also turned into ruins and disappeared. In the seventh layer of the palace, the 6 colorful halos collapsed one by one. It was a shocking sight. It was as if the 6 great worlds had been destroyed at the same time. In the 8th layer of the palace, white clouds lingered and golden light flashed. It was as if the realm of wonders of the celestial kingdom in the sky had also turned into nothingness and completely collapsed. In the last and highest layer, the mysterious, indescribable light also lost its former magic and mystery under the influence of the eternal light of calamity. It turned bright but ordinary, then dimmed and finally disappeared. The 9 heavens of Taishu Palace collapsed at this moment. Tai One Lord sighed and said to Lin Daohan, Daohan, come and activate the Haotian mirror. As he spoke, he prepared to welcome Lin Feng. But Lin Feng silently said, Master Lin, let's end this feud with my disciple Xian Yi first. As he said, Lin Feng, creation divine light. Creation Lin Feng of his right hand. Of Lin Feng of his hands. Of Lin Feng of Lin Feng's hand. Of the Tao. Of Feng of heaven of the seal of Lin of Tao of Feng. The back and of the back of Lin Lin of Lin of sky of heaven and earth. Lin Feng's fingers moved. At this moment, the Haotian mirror shook. On the other side, Fate Creation Boy activated the Book of Destruction and continuously pressed on the Haotian mirror. This caused the Haotian mirror, which was distracted by the crack of the Dead Sea, to become increasingly unstable. Tai One Lord's expression changed slightly. He stopped and turned back to control the Haotian mirror. Finally, he stabilized the Haotian mirror. Lin Daohan took a deep breath and slowly said, If that's the case, I'm sorry. Under the umbrella, Zhu Yi stood up calmly. He dusted off his clothes and leaped out. He came in front of Lin Daohan. The magnificent golden Nirvana bridge turned into a long rainbow and crossed the heavens and the earth. Righteous One Dao Venerate put his palms together, and behind him, 2 old men appeared. They were the magic treasure of the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum, the Primordial Spirit Supreme Drum Immortal, and the magic treasure of the Void Yin Yang Bell, the Primordial Spirit Yin Yang Elder. The 2 old men took a step forward and merged with their bodies. Then, a large amount of light flashed in the void. A huge hall that was not inferior to the Taishang Imperial Palace appeared. It was unbelievably tall, as if it was the residence of a deity or a kingdom of immortals. The hall was like a world of its own. It was connected with the chi of heaven and earth in the surrounding spiritual sea. It was as if it wanted to turn this vast world into its own courtyard, a part of the divine kingdom. This was another creation magic treasure of Taishu Temple. Taishu Temple. This time, Taishu Temple really did its best to enter the spiritual sea. Lin Daohan shook his head at Shoichi Daishin and said, Grand Uncle Masters, I think it's better for you to activate the Taishu Temple. I have the Taishu seal. Even if we add the Taishu Temple, Xianmen Tianzong still has the Taishang Imperial Palace. Between me and Zhu Yi, we have ended the antecedents. Even if we win, it won't be of much help in the current situation. The key is still on your side. As he spoke, he flew away, affecting Zhu Yi and the Golden Permitha Bridge. Lin Feng did not make things difficult for Lin Daohan. Instead, he flicked his sleeve and swept toward Shoichi Daishin, Dao Master Xian Yi and the others. Shoichi Daishin frowned. After exchanging a glance with Dao Master Xian Yi, both of them turned into streams of light and flew into the Taishu Temple. 2 elders of the Taishu Temple sat cross-legged side by side in the main hall. Their hands were constantly changing the incantation gestures, and streams of magic power were sent into the Taishu Temple. 2 streams of air, one black and one white, rose and circled above their heads. Yin and Yang blended together, and then turned into a golden light that connected with the magnificent palace. The aura of the Taishu Temple skyrocketed, but when Lin Feng flicked his sleeve, the grand existence that seemed like a creation was knocked back. The connection between the temple and the spiritual sea world was almost severed. It was like a house built on the ground, but when it was swept by a hurricane, it kept sliding and was about to be blown off the ground. Lin Feng looked at the Taishu Temple and suddenly laughed. In the past, when he fought the Celestial Heaven Sword and the Taishu Temple in West Hill City, it was the first time he fought against a creation-grade magic treasure. However, at that time, the people who controlled the Taishu Temple were Dao-fusing Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist. Now, it was Shoichi Daishin and Dao Master Xian Yi who were in the Dharma-ending realm. Lin Feng stretched out his palm and spread his fingers. In an instant, his palm covered the sky, so that Shoichi Daishin and Dao Master Xian Yi could no longer see the scenery of the spiritual sea world. Then, he reached out his hand toward the Taishu Temple. Light flashed between his fingers, and countless runes gathered and intertwined, turning into a huge array. It was the yin and yang life and death formation that Lin Feng had evolved with his own magic power. When the yin and yang life and death formation was activated, the 6 transformations of life and death, yin and yang, eternity and instant, heaven and earth, light and darkness, and void and reality were all activated. The array activated the 2 extremes of infinity, manifesting an immense force that turned into a huge hand of light that directly grabbed the Taishu temple. The incomparably violent force shook the 2 elders of the Taishu temple and the Taishu temple. In front of this palm, the Taishu temple, which was as huge as a world, also became insignificant and was grasped by the palm's open fingers. In the void, the golden light and white clouds kept shattering. The light of the yin and yang life and death formation began to spread in all directions. Without the protection of the Taishu temple, the Xianlin Taoist could not resist this majestic force. One by one, they fell back and could not even stand firmly in the void. Lin Feng waved his other sleeve and opened it. In an instant, the heaven and earth reversal and yin and yang chaos were reversed, and a terrifying suction force was generated. Looking carefully, one could see that in the sleeve was also a huge yin and yang life and death formation. At this moment, it was activating the 2 extremes of reversal. The formation rolled up and immediately engulfed the Xianlin Taoist and the others. They were sucked into the formation. Before they could recover, the terrifying attack that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had already attacked them. The momentum was as if it wanted to crush them all. Seeing this, Tai Sect Master closed his eyes, frowned, and let out a long sigh. Then his eyes, which had been closed all this time, finally opened at this moment. Lin Feng looked over and saw that there was a horizontal crack in the middle of each of Tai Sect Master's eyes, causing his eyes to be turbid and without light. But at this moment, although the cracks still existed, Tai Sect Master's eyes began to shine brightly. The aura around his body also began to rise, and a strong aura of magic power began to surge all over his body, far exceeding what it was before. It was just that this kind of magic power fluctuation was not like the mysterious and leisurely Taishu temple cultivators were used to. Instead, it seemed fierce and violent. Lin Feng glanced at him and shook his head. If you force yourself to improve like this, you will still not be able to return to your peak state of the past. It will further damage your own vitality, which is tantamount to drinking poison to quench thirst. Tai Sect Master's brows relaxed at this moment, and his expression became tranquil. Silently, he said, "During the war between the 2 worlds, if Sect Master Lin had not unsealed that fierce sword of yours, this old man would have made the same plan. But whether it would be effective or not is another matter. Sect Master Lin, this old man has always admired your strength and talent, but it is also because of this that the path you want to take makes this old man tremble in fear. This old man is already old, and I don't have the guts to see you risk the entire divine land." As Tai Sect Master spoke, he lightly touched the Haotian mirror, and his magic power merged with the Haotian mirror. Under the situation where the Haotian mirror was taking care of the crack in the Dead Sea, its power still increased significantly, and it withstood the pressure of the Book of Collapse. It separated a mirror light and shot it toward the yin and yang life and death formation that was suppressing the Taishu temple. Lin Feng laughed. "Let's each rely on our own abilities." As he spoke, he activated the yin and yang life and death formation with his palm, manifesting a giant shining hand that was still suppressing the Taishu temple. He had no intention of moving at all. With his other hand, he pointed at the Haotian mirror that was flying toward him. The eternal light of calamity burst out and immediately extinguished the mirror light. Lin Feng looked at Tai Sect Master with a smile, but he did not attack him or the Haotian mirror. The uneasiness in Tai Sect Master's heart grew stronger, but when he saw that Lin Feng was still suppressing the Taishu temple, Shoichi Dashin, and Dao Master Xian Yi, he sighed. He held the Haotian mirror with one hand and pointed at Lin Feng with the other. At this moment, Tai Sect Master once again used the heavenly secret art, and his power was much stronger than before. The mysterious light made everyone present, except for Lin Feng, feel inexplicably frightened. It was as if they were doomed to fail once they came into contact with the light. Only Lin Feng chuckled and did not change his movement. He moved again, and the eternal light of calamity shot out and blocked Tai Sect Master's attack. At the same time, he increased the strength of his hand, and the Taishu temple was suddenly overwhelmed. The bricks, tiles, and stones began to shatter. The faces of Shoichi Daishin and Tao Master Xian Yi turned pale at the same time, and a large amount of light burst out from their bodies, turning into a mist of light. It was as if all the pores on their bodies were bleeding at the same time, forming a mist of blood. Chapter 1446. Lin Feng intercepted Tai Yi Dao Lord's attack. At the same time, he activated the Book of Destruction and continued to suppress the Haotian mirror. After Tai Yi Dao Lord opened his eyes, his magic power, aura, principles, and concepts all became extremely mysterious and kept increasing. In the end, he was almost at the same level as the future star-glazed Buddha Lord. When he activated the heavenly scripture, he became even more threatening. However, the magic power and aura around him fluctuated wildly. It did not feel smooth and smooth. Instead, it seemed very unstable. It was like a pavilion in the sky with an unstable foundation. No matter how magnificent it was, it could collapse on its own at any time. For an expert at the level of Tai Yi Dao Lord, this was undoubtedly an extremely abnormal thing. It was also full of danger and trouble. However, at this moment, in order to deal with the pressure brought by Lin Feng, he could only take a risk. Tai Yi Dao Lord's eyes, which were split in the middle, emitted a faint light. It was calm and determined. However, such a risk could not do anything to Lin Feng. With the Book of Destruction above Lin Feng's head, he fought with the Haotian mirror and the people of the Taishu temple. Although Shoichi Daishin, Dao Lord Xian, and the others were in danger, Tai Yi Dao Lord gritted his teeth and activated the Haotian mirror. He focused most of his energy on the crack of the Dead Sea. The mirror light combined with the black and white light that pierced through the three realms and extended towards the Dead Sea. As the path of light continued, the balance formed by the collision between the Dead Sea and the Spirit Sea, where the Sea of the Great Path and the Sea of Finality collided, became more and more stable. Finally, the path of light shook violently. Around the crack of the Dead Sea, time and space shook and distorted to form another realm, existing between the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea. The Haotian mirror and Tai Yi Dao Lord were pulled out of the Spirit Sea and entered that realm. Lin Feng's lips curled into an indecipherable smile. Grabbing the Taishu Sage Temple with one hand, he rose into the air and stepped into the domain. It was a completely gray world. Between heaven and earth, there was only the Haotian mirror that looked like the grand sun hanging high in the sky, flashing brilliance. The brilliance penetrated into the crevice of the Dead Sea and continued to shine. Lin Feng's gaze followed the direction of the Haotian mirror's light. In that deathly silent world, there seemed to be two faint shadows. The two faint shadows seemed to be at the center of the Dead Sea. They even seemed to occupy the entire field of vision. They were neither up nor down, neither forward nor backward, neither left nor right. The path of light seemed to have lost the sense of distance and length, making it difficult for people to distinguish it. It reflected an absurd and profound concept. And on the other side of Lin Feng, the figure of the future glazed Buddha also appeared in this region of space, sitting cross-legged on the Babel Pagoda. His closed eyes reopened, his gaze also looking at the two faint shadows in the sea of death. His expression was neither sad nor happy. Lin Feng looked at the two figures that were gradually becoming clearer. He was not surprised, but his gaze became more solemn. There was a look of interest on his face as he studied the two faint shadows. At this moment, Tai Yi Dao Lord's eyes were closed again. His spiritual power and aura rapidly weakened. For a time, it seemed that only the light of the Haotian mirror was shining between heaven and earth. At the same time, between the Spirit Sea and the world, there were other battles that were equally earth-shaking. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, who had been seriously injured by Lin Feng's aura, saw that Lin Feng did not attack him and felt a little relieved. At this moment, he just wanted to find a way to leave the Spirit Sea. But a cold thought shrouded his whole body, locked onto his position, and rapidly approached him. It was Lin Feng's fourth disciple, Yu Hongyan. Because Lin Feng's aura had distorted time and space, the two sides were now very close. Taking advantage of the moment when Heavenly Wolf Great Sage was seriously injured by Lin Feng and paused in the air, Yu Hongyan had quickly caught up. Heavenly Wolf Great Sage flew into a rage. "Don't mention your master. How dare you act presumptuously in front of me?" Looking back, he saw Yu Hongyan wearing the 7-kill star armor. Beams of fierce purple light filled the void, and he held a dark green halberd in his hand, which could destroy all things with a swing. It was the army destroyer halberd. But what shocked Heavenly Wolf Great Sage was the ring on Yu Hongyan's right index finger. The ring was inlaid with a round bead that looked like a red crystal. It was crystal clear, but there was an extremely fierce and greedy malice coming from it. Others might not recognize it, but how could Heavenly Wolf Great Sage not recognize it? The ring was made from one of his eyes. The eye that was dug out by Lin Feng in the desolate ancient sea of stars. As soon as he saw the ring, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage felt a burning pain in his injured eye. The anger and hatred that he had helplessly suppressed soared into the sky again, and he wanted nothing more than to tear Yu Hongyan into pieces. Yu Hongyan's face was expressionless. He had completely entered a calm and even cold fighting state, and only his opponent's movements were left in his eyes. The ring on her right hand was a magic weapon she had refined after she reached the nascent soul realm, using the eyeball of Heavenly Wolf Great Sage as the main raw material. It was called the Heavenly Wolf Blood Eye. At this moment, streaks of dark red blood energy were surging above Yu Hongyan's blood-red eyes. They vaguely formed an image of a wild wolf above Yu Hongyan's head. The ferocious wolf head was staring at Heavenly Wolf Great Sage with blood-red eyes. Along with the wolf's head, the stars were shaking, and the wind and rain were swaying. All kinds of chaotic phenomena came together to form a scene of great destruction and chaos. The wolf's head gradually disappeared, and so did the other scenes. Only the imperial star was shaking, and the world was turning upside down. Everything seemed to be changing the world. Yu Hongyan held the army vanquisher halberd in his right hand, and the power of the 7-kill star armor and the Heavenly Wolf Blood Eye merged into one. These three very top spirit-nurturing grade magic weapons were extraordinarily powerful. But in the past, even if Heavenly Wolf Great Sage had been seriously injured, he would not have cared. But at this moment, the power of these three magic weapons merged with one another, giving rise to a completely different scene. When they came together, they produced a strange state that was rarely seen in other magic weapons. The power of the magic weapons was added to Yu Hongyan's body, and together with Yu Hongyan's transcendence energy, they mutually supported each other, making them look even more ferocious. Even Heavenly Wolf Great Sage could not help but look askance. At this moment, the quantitative change seemed to have triggered a qualitative change. Although he was in the spirit sea, he could feel the three great stars of the universe, the 7-kill star, the army vanquisher star, and the ravenous wolf star shining together, turning into an endless killing machine. Yu Hongyan raised his spear and charged at Heavenly Wolf Great Sage. His feet moved in a series of steps, trampling the void. For a moment, it seemed like she was stepping on countless stars, and as she charged forward, the stars were destroyed one after another. "Move!" With a low roar, Yu Hongyan took a step forward. In an instant, the stars moved, the universe changed, and the stars shifted. In an instant, Yu Hongyan seemed to have transformed into the king of the stars in the 9 heavens. The vast world, the universe, and the starry sky were free to roam, and his aura established a mysterious and unfathomable connection with the universe and the vast stars. "Open!" Yu Hongyan roared again, and the acupoints all over his body crackled like thunder. His blood chi went berserk, and suddenly, it was like a volcano erupting, a tsunami in the sea, an earthquake in the earth, and a river bursting its banks. Endless calamities and calamities erupted together, and ghosts and gods wailed, and the heavens wept blood. It felt like the end of the world, and the destruction of all things, a great collapse, a great catastrophe, and a great tribulation spread out. "Break!" Yu Hongyan roared for the third time, and he swung the army-breaching imperial halberd in his hand, drawing a shocking arc in the void, and brought it down on Celestial Wolf Great Saint's head. As Yu Hongyan's halberd fell, It was as if the world had been turned upside down. One strike of the halberd had collapsed the pillars that held up the sky, and the halberd had collapsed a part of the world. When the heavens unleashed their killing intent, the stars changed positions. When the earth unleashed its killing intent, the dragons and snakes rose from the land. When humans unleashed their killing intent, the world turned upside down. At this moment, the heavens, the earth, the man, and the essence, chi, and spirit had completely melted into one, and with the power of the Kill Wolf Great Saint's 3 treasures, they worked together to activate the strongest attack in Yu Hongyan's life. As Celestial Wolf Great Saint roared, he revealed his true form. Violent power surged from his body, and light patterns covered his entire body. It was as if he was in a mountain of bones and a sea of blood. A deep purple light flashed in his eyes, and a huge claw also grabbed at Yu Hongyan. Suddenly, a mournful mark appeared in the void, and there was a blood-red light flashing in it. Before it even touched Yu Hongyan already felt his chi and blood collapsing. But Yu Hongyan was not afraid at all. The spear that was falling on Celestial Wolf Great Saint did not waver in the slightest. It was as if he had completely ignored Celestial Wolf Great Saint's attack. Celestial Wolf Great Saint was also a fierce and domineering person. Seeing that Yu Hongyan did not retreat, he also gritted his teeth and fought back with Yu Hongyan's attack. After seeing Yu Hongyan's attack of the unity of heaven, earth, and man, he had completely eliminated his contempt for Yu Hongyan from his mind. This woman in front of him, who was only at the nascent divinity transformation realm, had the ability to threaten his life. But Celestial Wolf Great Saint was a veteran of hundreds of battles, and he was brave by nature. He immediately counterattacked with the cursed blood claw. At this moment, he had a faint sense of foreboding, but he still had to fight for a way out. Even if he could not break out of the encirclement, he had to make the people of Xianmen Tianzong pay the price. But at this moment, endless light suddenly shone in the void above Yu Hongyan's head. A jet-black tree branch appeared and floated in midair, its dark golden radiance illuminating the world. Among the layers of light, a towering tree could be vaguely seen. It had a jet-black trunk and golden leaves that swayed constantly, giving off a feeling that it was indestructible. It was a Mahayana-grade magic treasure that belonged to Xianmen Tianzong's Snowstorm Valley lineage, the Salo Wonder Tree. It had been personally refined by Lin Feng in the past, and in terms of defensive capabilities alone, it was far superior to other Mahayana-grade magic treasures. Celestial Wolf Great Saint's single eye widened as he watched the cursed blood claw land on the Salo Wonder Tree's dark golden radiance, causing ripples to spread across its surface. The dark golden radiance broke a little, but it quickly dissipated. More dark golden radiance poured in from all directions, quickly filling up the blood-red crack. Celestial Wolf Great Saint almost coughed up a mouthful of blood when he saw this scene, and a feeling of helplessness rose in his heart. With the Salo Wonder Tree protecting him, it was really difficult for him to hurt Yu Hongyan, and Yu Hongyan could go all out and attack him. Chapter 1447. Most of Lin Feng's disciples were aggressive and liked to take the initiative. But among the 8 of them, Yu Hongyan's fighting style was the fiercest and most violent. Not only did she not leave any leeway for her enemies, she also left no leeway for herself. As her master, Lin Feng had never forcibly corrected her fighting style because it had already been condensed into Yu Hongyan's martial will. If she changed it easily, not only would Yu Hongyan's martial cultivation be crippled, but she would also suffer a great setback. Since she couldn't make any adjustments to her own conditions, then she should make up for her shortcomings with external conditions. The miraculous Shaluo tree, which Lin Feng had personally refined with the Shaluo iron tree as the foundation, had been infused with many kinds of power concepts. Today, its defense was so strong that it even surpassed that of a pure-blooded black tortoise or a Shaluo iron tree demon at the realm of oneness of the stars and souls. Yu Hongyan was a descendant of Snow Wind Valley, and most of them had similar styles to Yu Hongyan. This miraculous Shaluo tree was the best choice to help Snow Wind Valley. This time, before entering the spiritual sea with Lin Feng, Yu Hongyan had invited the miraculous Shaluo tree from Snow Wind Valley to accompany him. At this moment, with the protection of the miraculous Shaluo tree, Yu Hongyan didn't have to worry about defense when facing the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage. Instead, he unleashed his formidable strength to the fullest, attacking without defending. He attacked the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage like a storm, exerting his strongest strength to the extreme. Originally, the two sides had been attacking each other, but the miraculous Shaluo tree suddenly appeared to resist the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage's cursed blood claw, while Yu Hongyan's army vanquisher halberd slashed down from above. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage was instantly met with tragedy. The sea of blood shattered, and the mountain of bones collapsed. A giant black wolf howled miserably, and a copious amount of blood essence flew into the air. Yu Hongyan's halberd had left a terrible wound on the celestial wolf Great Sage's body, and he had also been injured by Lin Feng earlier. At this time, a hazy mist of blood was bursting out of the pores all over his body. Yu Hongyan's expression was calm and his eyes were cold. He had gained the upper hand. Without pulling the halberd out of Celestial Wolf Great Saint's flesh, he activated the terrifying formless astral wind of the ninth heaven and began to wreak havoc inside Celestial Wolf Great Saint's body, trying to tear him apart from the inside. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage kept roaring as he forcibly stabilized his body. He wanted to fight back with all his might, but was blocked by the Salo Wonder Tree. He had no choice but to retreat. The Heavenly Wolf Great Saint was able to retreat as his blood dyed the sky red. There, Lin Feng's figure had disappeared. The border between the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea had formed a gray independent domain, making it difficult to see the changes inside. At this moment, the image that flashed through the Heavenly Wolf Great Saint's mind was the scene when he first met Lin Feng in the Cloudy Forest realm. At that time, he was high-spirited and didn't take Lin Feng seriously at all. If it wasn't for the Golden Rock Great Saint sacrificing the Dark Flower of Yudu, he would have fought with Lin Feng at that time. He wanted to get rid of Lin Feng as soon as possible and seize Jade Capital Mountain. But when they met again, it was in the Sea of Stars. At that time, Lin Feng had already made him feel like a stranger, completely different from the past. And at that time, he was no longer in the eyes of Lin Feng. The huge gap made the Heavenly Wolf Great Saint feel like vomiting blood. When the war between the two worlds came to this day, he had completely lost this thought. But today, there was a possibility that he might die in the hands of Lin Feng's disciple, and a disciple who was only in the primordial spirit incarnation realm at that. The Heavenly Wolf Great Saint inevitably had mixed feelings and was extremely unwilling. He couldn't help but think, if he had ignored everything in the Cloudy Forest realm and gone all out to deal with Lin Feng, what would have happened? Would he have been able to kill him on the spot, or would he have been crushed to death by Lin Feng's sudden burst of power? It was a pity that all this could only be thought now. There was no way to verify it. Now that he thought about it, it seemed incomparably distant, but in fact, it was only a few decades in the boundless world. Compared to the years that the Celestial Wolf Great Sage had lived for, it was an extremely short period of time. But it was in such a short time that earth-shattering changes had occurred, making people feel as if the world had been turned upside down and become unreal. The Heavenly Wolf Great Saint was in a trance. He only came back to his senses when Yu Hongyan thrust his halberd in front of him again, hurriedly dodging and parrying. It was just that the battle in front of him had long made the Heavenly Wolf Great Saint lose hope. And while Yu Hongyan was chasing after the Heavenly Wolf Great Saint, the monkey had also caught up with Golden Cicada on the other side. He grinned and said, "Old fool, let's see where you can run to this time." After saying that, he picked up his cudgel and fiercely struck at Golden Cicada. Golden Cicada looked at the monkey, let out a long sigh, and shook his head. He did not say anything more, and continued to flee while blocking. The two of them fought and stopped, and in an instant, they were far away and disappeared without a trace. There was no one else near the giant golden lake. The primordial golden lamp fell back onto the surface of the lake, rocking along with the rippling lake water. Lin Feng's three doppelgangers, as well as Yang Qing, were still sitting cross-legged on the primordial golden lamp. At this moment, they were all looking up. At the very top, the the spiritual sea and the Dead Sea intersected, evolving into an independent gray domain, causing the sky above their heads to turn gray. And under this gray sky, two young men stood facing each other across the void. One of them was dressed in green. His expression was calm, without the slightest ripple. His eyes were also calm, as if nothing in the world could affect his mind. As for the other person, he was dressed in purple with a white robe on the outside. He was dressed like a scholar, standing with his hands behind his back on a magnificent golden bridge. The golden bridge stretched across the sky, its end nowhere to be seen. Zhu Yi looked at Lin Daohan and asked, "I've already met Wu Qingru, but I wonder what is the identity of the other doppelganger who messed up my exam?" Lin Daohan's expression was calm, and his voice also sounded flat and dry. There was no inflection in his tone, and there were no ups and downs in his emotions. His surname is Wang, and his name is Kuan. His courtesy name is Haud. He is from Yenzhou, the back of the great Zhou dynasty. He is not a qi refinement cultivator. He is just an ordinary scholar. Zhu Yi nodded. "I can't say he is ordinary, but he is extremely knowledgeable." Lin Daohan said, "No, if he did not sense your rich literary aura and was stimulated by you, he would not have been able to reach the level of alarming the 100 saints of the Confucian school by himself. At most, it would have been a strange phenomenon of flowers blooming with the stroke of his brush." Zhu Yi looked at him and said, "Before the war between the two worlds, I once said that the contest between us would be carried out on another battlefield." Hearing Zhu Yi's words, Lin Daohan suddenly fell silent. Even his usually calm eyes flickered slightly. This other battlefield was naturally the problem of the supreme Wang Qing Dao and the void Yin Yang Dao. The result was already clear. After the Buddhist discussion of karma, when Zhu Yi mentioned this matter, Lin Daohan had a vague feeling in his heart. After the war between the two worlds ended, the Taishu temple closed its doors and bided its time. Lin Daohan raised this matter as an extremely important issue and had been studying it together with the Lord Tai and the other elders of the Taishu temple. However, the speed of progress of the Xianmen Tianzong still exceeded their expectations. Lin Daohan sighed and shook his head. "I lost that contest." Zhu Yi smiled. "Because of the discussion of Dao, we fought across space. Actually, it can be considered as settling the previous grudge between us. However, I dare not take credit for it alone. Besides me, the study of the supreme Wang Qing Dao and the void Yin Yang Dao in your Taishu temple was due to the contributions of my senior brother and junior brother, as well as the guidance of my master. Today is the battle of the Spirit Sea. You and I might as well fight again and completely settle the grudge." As Zhu Yi said this, the Yi Dao talisman above his head shone and floated in the void. As the light and dark intertwined, it illuminated the vast world. Chapter 1448. As for Lin Daohan, Zhu Yi didn't look down on him. Before Xianmen Tianzong's rise, Taishu Temple had always been the #1 sacred ground of the human cultivation world in the Divine Land. The threshold for becoming a disciple of Taishu Temple was abnormally high. Anyone who is able to enter the Taishu Temple and become a direct disciple of the Taishu Temple, disregarding everything else, at least in terms of cultivation talent, they all have outstanding aspects. Lin Daohan was the most outstanding person among the great Void Sect's disciples of this generation. He stood at the peak with an absolute advantage and was above everyone in his generation. He was a genius among geniuses. Although he had been gathered on White Cloud Mountain for many years and wasn't famous, those who were familiar with the truth would know how powerful he was. He formed his nascent soul at 15 and became a primordial spirit at 36. Before the rise of Xianmen Tianzong's celestial emperor Shi Tianhao, he was the youngest person in the history of the Divine Land. When he had just formed his primordial spirit, he had almost been the next monastery master of Taishu Temple after his master, Yan Nanlai. It was only until Xianmen Tianzong's rise that Lin Daohan's brilliance gradually faded. However, it was just not as dazzling anymore. His power still caused countless speculations in the world. In a sense, in the eyes of others, The gradual fading of Lin Daohan's brilliance was actually more because he lacked actual battle achievements to support him. In the war between the two worlds, during the battle on White Cloud Mountain, he was in the Great Supreme Void Yin-Yang formation and fought against the Yudu race with Quang Heng and the rest. However, their opponents were led by Yudu, who was in the Last Days realm, and even Mirage Sun, who was in the Middle Calamity and going through Calamity. In that battle, Lin Daohan's performance was mediocre, causing many people to look down on him. But Zhu Yi wouldn't. Even though he didn't have a direct understanding of Lin Daohan, now that he was face to face with the Yi Dao talisman flashing above his head, he could feel the strength hidden beneath Lin Daohan's calm demeanor. Because the power of the Grand Supreme Void Yin and Yang formation was jointly controlled by 12 people, it was actually the strength of the people that was added to the formation, not the other way around. Therefore, the greatest power of the formation was not dependent on the person with the highest cultivation like the Yin and Yang life and death formation. Now that Lin Daohan had the Taishu seal, his cultivation was basically raised to the level of his own Dharma-ending realm. When he was facing Lin Feng, he could not reveal his cultivation base. However, Zhu Yi, who had been carefully observing under the umbrella, could vaguely sense that among all the cultivators of the Taishu Temple in the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, his strength was second only to the Taoist High Lord, and was even stronger than Shoichi Dashin and Dao Master Xianwen. This person's strength was even stronger than his master, Yan Nanlai. Zhu Yi looked at Lin Daohan and suddenly asked, "Have you cultivated the heavenly secret art?" Lin Daohan answered frankly, "Among the cultivators of my temple, the only one who cultivated the heavenly secret art before the Dharma-ending realm was Grandmaster Qiyang, but that was only after he experienced the first ordeal." Zhu Yi nodded, "That's a pity." After saying that, he did not say anything else. He stood on the Permitha Golden Bridge and chanted slowly. Thousands of characters of the Great Path flew out from his body. Zhu Yi's figure changed, and he manifested his 3-feet-tall void return body. He wore a high hat and ancient clothes, and the lapels of his clothes fluttered as they merged into the void. He held an ancient book in his hand, and the words, "I Ching," were written on the cover. As the pages of the book flipped, there were blank spaces, but they did not seem empty. Instead, they contained countless possibilities, and they could bear the weight of countless wonderful truths. The unknown was understood as the known, and the known extended to even more unknowns. The two complemented each other endlessly, and they encompassed everything that was known and unknown. The sea of learning was boundless, and there was no end to learning. In the process of continuous exploration and learning, one could turn the unknown into the known, and use various methods to sense things and principles that were once unperceivable, understand things and principles that were once incomprehensible, and grasp things and principles that were once uncontrollable. This was the process of the human Tao continuously advancing. The facial features of the void return body were the same as Zhu Yi's, and the holy ancient robe was still draped over his body. Zhu Yi's void return body lightly tapped the Permitha Golden Bridge with the tip of his foot, and a magnificent golden light pressed down on Lin Daohan. Lin Daohan looked at Zhu Yi calmly, and his gaze suddenly fluctuated slightly. At the same time, Lin Daohan's appearance and aura underwent a drastic change. Before this, he was already very different from his early years. His facial features were extraordinarily handsome, as if the outer layer of a jade stone was gradually peeling off, revealing the beautiful jade within. Among all the men that Zhu Yi had seen in his life, only Yu Huaishan, the most mysterious of the 4 prodigies of ancient Taishu, and Miao Shihao, the guardian elder of Xianmen Tianzong, could be mentioned in the same breath as Lin Daohan. However, what was contradictory was that Lin Daohan's temperament seemed very ordinary. This even caused his handsome facial features to look ordinary and dull, losing the brilliance that should have been there. At this moment, the ordinary aura around Lin Daohan completely dissipated, and his entire person appeared handsome and elegant. What caught Zhu Yi's attention was naturally not how Lin Daohan looked, but with this change, the aura around Lin Daohan's body seemed to have further increased. His own strength increased, and with the support of the Taishu engraving, it seemed to be even more thrilling. Zhu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly, and the Tao-changing talisman on top of his head flashed, and there were rays of light flowing in his eyes. Interesting, this is a unique way of cultivating the supreme Wang Qing path? However, although he was trying to figure out Lin Daohan's changes through the Tao-changing talisman, Zhu Yi's hands did not stop at all. The golden bridge of the Permitha realm directly descended on the top of Lin Daohan's head. Zhu Yi did not easily make a move, and when he did not hold back. Lin Daohan already knew this. He looked at the majestic golden bridge above his head, and without hesitation, the Taishu engraving on the back of his left hand flashed, and layers of Taishu light flowed in the sky. It was mysterious, unpredictable, and indescribable. The light rose and slightly supported the falling golden bridge of the Permitha realm. Then, Lin Daohan's palm swiped in the void beside him, and instantly, a door of light appeared. He stepped into the door of light, and his body instantly disappeared, avoiding Zhu Yi and the golden bridge of the Permitha realm. Zhu Yi's expression did not change. The golden bridge of the Permitha realm lit up with colorful halos, and its aura became more and more profound. The bridge connected the past and the present, and endless time and space. As the golden light flashed, the golden bridge of the Permitha realm actually chased after Lin Daohan's footsteps, and rushed into the central heavenly gate. Once the golden bridge entered the central heavenly gate, under the tremors of the mana, the central heavenly gate could not continue, and it closed again. Lin Daohan's body also reappeared. However, under the flashing of the Taishu light, Lin Daohan took a step forward, flipped over the golden bridge, and arrived above Zhu Yi's head. He pressed his palm down, and suddenly, 6 halos flashed and gathered in the void. It was as if there were 6 layers of worlds, and together, they crushed the space and attacked Zhu. Facing Lin Daohan's 6 divine armor of harmonious heaven, Zhu Yi's expression was calm. The golden bridge of the Permitha realm under his feet shot up into the sky, forming a torrential force, and attacked Lin Daohan. And Zhu Yi himself raised his hand, conjured a spell, and pointed his finger at Lin Daohan. Streams of air flowed in the void, and then intertwined with each other, spreading far and wide, covering the surrounding void. Lin Daohan's eyes flashed, and he only felt that he was surrounded by the streams of air. His mana was constantly fluctuating, and became unstable. It was not submission, nor was it turmoil. It was as if it wanted to move forward with the broad and spreading airflow, spreading all over the vast thousand worlds, assimilating all living beings, and involuntarily throwing themselves into this rolling tide. Zhu Yi combined the Book of Tao and his own Book of Changes, and after the Absolute Way of 10, it was another powerful magical power, spreading Tao to the vast thousand worlds. The majestic force rolled and spread, causing all beings in the surroundings to involuntarily throw themselves into it, as if that was what everyone wanted, and what they were doing now was just mediocre. Now, it was time to give up the small and take the big, and return to the right path. This was not spiritual confusion, nor was it mental suppression, but rather, it made people have such thoughts in their hearts. Even Lin Daohan, who was fighting against Zhu Yi, vaguely felt that he seemed to be benefiting from this vast force. Yu Hongyan, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, Yang Qing, and White Tiger Great Sage, who were fighting far away, all vaguely felt that they were benefiting. They too were members of the vast thousand worlds. Lin Daohan looked carefully at Zhu Yi, and nodded slightly, but did not say anything. The Taishu mystic light flashed again around him, helping him escape from the torrential force. But the airflow spread in all directions, and where the force was heading, how could it be easily avoided? Lin Daohan's hand changed the spell, and the supreme demon subduing charm appeared, traversing the heavens and the earth. It also seemed to temporarily isolate the void, buying time for him. But when Zhu Yi saw this, the Tao-changing talisman on top of his head kept flashing, and then he slowly reached out and pointed. Suddenly, another white pillar of light appeared in the void. Although the power and aura were somewhat different, it was clearly the supreme demon subduing charm. It was the supreme demon subduing charm that belonged to Zhu. In the midst of traversing, this white pillar of light and Lin Daohan's supreme demon subduing charm intersected in the void, while the rolling waves of Zhu Yi's spreading the great thousand worlds continued to press down on Lin Daohan. Seeing this, the look in Lin Daohan's eyes suddenly became soul-stirring. In between his eyebrows, a spot of black light flashed, and divine runes and talismans emerged from it, and then spread to the surroundings. Countless divine rays and colorful clouds emerged from it, but they were also dim, covering the heavens and the earth, and darkening the void. In this darkness, Lin Daohan's expression was calm, and under the cover of the light in the void, his figure looked a little unreal. But how could Zhu Yi not recognize this brilliance that shook the great path of heaven and earth? Chapter 1449. Under the heaven-shrouding umbrella, Yang Qing suddenly stood up. The white tiger great sage, who had been crouching beside her, also stood up. His eyes shone as he looked at Lin Daohan, who was in the void. Their gazes fell on the mysterious rune above Lin Daohan's head. The rune looked extremely clear, and it gave off a feeling that it had no secrets. It was as if anyone could understand it, recognize it, observe it, and understand it. But what was contradictory was that it also contained a dark and obscure concept. It was invisible, unknown, indescribable, and indescribable. It was confusing and difficult to understand. The two mysterious concepts opposed each other and gradually merged. They seemed to be clearly separated and seriously opposed, but they seemed to transform and merge with each other. The two concepts, bright and dark, merged together to form this rune. It looked clear and simple, but it also seemed inexplicable and difficult to understand. Looking closely, the rune was clearly a word. It was the word "yi." From this word, there was no sadness, no joy, no emotion, but it wanted to understand everything and distinguish everything. It was clearly Zhu Yi's Yi Dao talisman. But this word rune had disappeared from above Zhu Yi's head. Instead, it had appeared above Lin Daohan's head. Zhu Yi's great Tao mystique of the thousand worlds had caused a shocking change in the world. The currents that led to the various worlds actually gradually weakened at this moment. Especially when they reached Lin Daohan's body, they disappeared without a trace. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone looked up at Lin Daohan. Light flashed in his eyes, and he nodded slightly. Interesting. Yang Qing frowned and turned to look at Lin Feng. Master, can his creation divine light forcefully steal other people's mystiques? After learning from the same sect for many years, Yang Qing could tell at a glance that the current Zhu Yi did not stop the scripture of change's great Tao mystique on his own, nor was he suppressed by someone else. It was as if he had lost the scripture of change's great Tao mystique and was unable to continue using it. The return to void Dharma body was the embodiment of one's understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. At this moment, the book of changes in Zhu Yi's return to void Dharma body had disappeared. Lin Daohan's performance at the moment was not to seize the spiritual qi and Dharma power, nor to break and dissolve Zhu Yi's Tao imparting the universe, but to take drastic measures, as if he was taking Zhu Yi's Tao of changes as his own. However, it was different from spiritual energy and magic power. No matter how intangible it was still an existence that could be measured. When a person cultivates his own divine ability, it starts from his own understanding of the Tao art he cultivates. It starts from his own exploration of the great Tao of heaven and earth, and after years of cultivation and polishing. How could such an existence be seized by others? Zhu Yi and Lin Daohan's current appearance was clearly not a copy, but Lin Daohan had forcibly seized Zhu Yi's scripture of change's great Tao mystique. At this moment, Lin Daohan had it, but Zhu Yi did not. Yang Qing looked carefully and saw that Zhu Yi was frowning slightly, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. However, the talisman of changes above his head did not appear again. This made Yang Qing feel even more ridiculous. Unlike other divine abilities, the scripture of changes was a great Tao mystique that Zhu Yi had comprehended himself. Even if it was seized by Lin Daohan, Zhu Yi should be able to recreate it. However, at this moment, the divine ability was like a tangible object. The original object was lost, and it was difficult to retrieve. Don't panic, don't panic. Lin Feng, who was at the side, observed for a moment and smiled. The effect of his divine light of creation is temporary. He needs to constantly activate the divine light of creation to maintain it. When he retracts his own divine light of creation, everything will return to normal. Because of this, he can only seize one divine ability at a time. Activating the divine light of creation consumes a lot of energy, and it is hard to sustain. Lin Feng said with a smile, "The divine light is mysterious and profound, allowing him to temporarily seize the divine abilities and techniques that belong to others, but he is also unable to comprehend the principles of these divine abilities. He can only use them temporarily." Lin Feng looked Lin Daohan up and down and smiled. Even the depth of the scripture of changes is exactly the same as when Xiaoyi activated it. In fact, it is still Xiaoyi's divine ability, but it has been strangely distorted into something tangible, and the right to use it has fallen into this person's hands. White Tiger Great Sage also stared at Lin Daohan and snorted. "You have a handsome face, and yet you produce a divine light of creation, yet you are so evil." Lin Feng laughed. The effect of the divine light of creation has nothing to do with a person's character. There are thousands of great Daos in the world, and they are mysterious and profound. Yang Qing's brows did not relax. She said softly, "He has good eyesight." Having been in the same sect with Zhu Yi for many years, Yang Qing naturally knew that when Zhu Yi refined his spirit to return to the void, he improved his divine ability. The most crucial point was actually to understand the obscure light, study the known and unknown Tao of Yin and Yang, and then create the great Tao mystique of changes. Especially the first and most fundamental manifestation of this great Tao, the talisman of changes. It seemed ordinary, but it was the foundation of other subsequent great Taos, such as Absolute Tao in 10 directions, imparting Tao to the boundless universe, and other divine abilities. They all originated from this. With the talisman of changes, Zhu Yi could see through unnamed and defeat his enemies first. At the same time, it was also one of the most important reasons for his great improvement in actual combat. After that, he cultivated other orthodoxies Dharma and Logos, and he got twice the result with half the effort. He could even achieve success in one go, and it was all thanks to the talisman of changes. Lin Daohan's divine light of creation and Yuluo divine light could only target one target at a time. However, he did not choose imparting Tao to the boundless universe or other direct divine abilities. Instead, he targeted the talisman of changes. His eyesight could not be said to not be sharp. Having the Yuluo divine light was a skill, but how to use it to its fullest potential was another skill. Yang Qing turned to look at Lin Feng. "Master, no matter who the opponent is or what divine ability, can he seize it?" Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. "There is a limit. Otherwise, the first person he would target would be me, not your second senior brother." Yang Qing and White Tiger Great Sage could not help but smile and shake their heads together. It depends on the opponent's cultivation and strength. There is a limit. If it's a divine ability that contains a strong power of destruction, like eldest senior brother's Celestial Flaming Lotus and Tao Annihilation Floating Life, he probably can't seize it. Yang Qing looked at Lin Daohan with a calm gaze. Slowly she analyzed. White Tiger Great Sage looked at Lin Daohan with a scrutinizing gaze. He had been in Xianmen Tianzong for many years. Most of these years, he had lived on Yujing Mountain, so he had a deep understanding of the human cultivation world. As the #1 holy land in the human cultivation world, Taishu Temple had a deep understanding of it. Although Xianmen Tianzong did not get along well with Taishu Temple, it would not belittle this behemoth that was almost at the same level as itself. Even after the war between the two realms, when Xianmen Tianzong officially surpassed Taishu Temple to become the #1 holy land in the human cultivation world, and when Taishu Temple hit its strength and bided its time, the successors of the celestial sect still attached great importance to it. As for Lin Daohan, the former #1 person of the younger generation in Taishu Temple, and now the new temple master, he naturally had a deep understanding of him. After Lin Daohan, there were countless outstanding figures in Taishu Temple. Whether it was Yan Mingyue, Pang Jie, or Shi Tianyi, they were just chasing after his footsteps. Although Shi Tianyi, the dual-pupiled person, had passed away many years ago, when he obtained Shi Tianhao's supreme Taoist root and combined it with his dual pupils, shocking the world, he was the brightest star among the younger generation in the divine land. It was widely acknowledged that as long as he did not die young, he was destined to become a legendary figure. Even though Shi Tianyi was just a teenager at that time and was only at the golden core stage or even the building foundation stage, the potential he showed was recognized by the entire human cultivation world. Not only was he the #1 person among the younger generation in the Great Qin dynasty, but he also had the demeanor of the #1 person among the younger generation in the entire divine land. Although the Great Zhou dynasty had the rise of Marquis Jinghuan Liang'an, compared to Shi Tianyi, who had the dual pupils and supreme Taoist root, he was somewhat weaker. However, within the Taishu temple, including Quang Heng, who later took Shi Tianyi in as a disciple, the unanimous evaluation of Shi Tianyi was that he might have the opportunity to challenge Lin Daohan's position among his peers in the future. Perhaps he would have the opportunity to try. However, in the recent decades, Lin Daohan had been too low-key, so it was difficult for outsiders to estimate his true level, and it was difficult for them to know exactly what he had up his sleeves. Lin Feng looked at Lin Daohan with interest. Excluding that thief Shi Tianyi, in the same generation, there were Tai and Lin Daohan who had established supreme Taoist root and obtained the divine light of creation. The Taishu temple really lives up to its name. Lin Daohan, who was in the void, looked at Zhu Yi and said calmly, "Easy, please excuse me." As he spoke, Taishu mystic light shrouded his body, and as the Yi Dao talisman flashed above his head, he suddenly turned around and counterattacked Zhu. Streaks of golden lightning covered the sky, shuttling between the clouds like Brontosaurus, roaring angrily. The fifth stage of the Taishu Nine Heavens technique, Heavenly Cloud Dragon Lightning Wielding Technique. Streaks of golden lightning descended from the sky like rain, falling towards Zhu Yi and the Golden Nirvana Bridge. The Golden Nirvana Bridge shone brightly, and a golden rainbow crossed the sky, covering the void. For a moment, it was as if the sky had cleared up after the rain, and the thunderstorm disappeared. However, as the Yi Dao talisman flashed above Lin Daohan's head, he put his hands together, and the golden thunderstorm that was blocked by the Golden Nirvana Bridge actually twisted and gathered in the void, and then specifically targeted a few spots on the Golden Nirvana Bridge to attack. The attack suddenly became tricky, and it seemed like it was going to break through the divine light of the Nirvana Bridge. At the same time, the Taishu mark on the back of Lin Daohan's left hand flashed continuously, and the follow-up attacks came wave after wave, and they were extremely violent and ferocious. It was completely different from the leisurely and relaxed style of the cultivators of the Taishu temple. This was because his Yuluo divine light could only be maintained for a limited time, but more importantly, it was the most suitable strategy to fight against Zhu Yi in his current state. Zhu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly, nodded and said, "Temple Master Lin, you have given me a surprise. You really have a sharp eye to snatch my Yi Dao talisman, but it's a pity that it's not yours, and it's not yours after all. If you truly understood my Yi Dao, I believe you wouldn't have done this." Chapter 1450. One side lost, and the other side gained. The difference between them could not be measured with just a few miles, especially when it was one of the decisive factors like the Book of Changes. With the help of the Taishu engraving, Lin Daohan's strength increased further after he received the Yi Dao talisman. Zhu Yi used the Golden Nirvana Bridge to protect himself and blocked his opponent's storm-like attacks. However, as the Yi Dao talisman above Lin Daohan's head operated, there seemed to be rays of light shining in his beer and sea of consciousness. As they intertwined, the fog in front of him dissipated and revealed the truth. He continuously deduced the concept of the Golden Nirvana Bridge and Zhu Yi's magical powers. This allowed him to have a clear target and counter the enemy's moves. When Zhu Yi was just thinking about it, he reacted first. More importantly, under the deduction of the Yi Dao talisman, in the actual process of fighting with Zhu Yi, he figured out Zhu Yi's magical powers bit by bit. A magnificent scene appeared in front of his eyes. The vast and profound theory of the Book of Tao finally revealed the tip of the iceberg in front of Lin Daohan. Even with his tough state of mind and knowledge, there was a moment where he felt dizzy. He just wanted to be immersed in it forever and understand the complicated yet simple mystery of heaven and earth. Around Lin Daohan's body, rays of light faintly lit up and intertwined in all directions in the spirit sea. Merely this brief glimpse caused Lin Daohan to feel as if he'd obtained a new understanding towards his comprehension of the principles of the heavens and the earth, and some of the problems that troubled him on his path of cultivation seemed to have been easily solved. He felt as if he'd been suddenly enlightened, and he wished for nothing more than to enter into closed-door cultivation right away to consider it clearly. As the magical powers around him surged, there seemed to be signs of sublimation and became more profound. Lin Daohan's face was calm, but his thoughts were not calm. After witnessing and understanding the strength of the generations of Xianmen Tianzong's descendants, after experiencing the changes of the Tao of cause and effect and the Tai and void techniques, he was already prepared in his heart. The orthodox Xianmen sect of wonders was most likely above the orthodoxy of his own Taishu temple. Xianmen Tianzong had replaced Taishu Temple as the #1 sacred place in the Divine Land. This was not only reflected in its current overall strength, but more importantly, its orthodoxy. However, he had never personally come into contact with the Tao Te Ching before, so he was unable to truly understand its profundities. Now that he had truly come into contact with the orthodox lineage of Xianmen Tianzong, his previous conjectures and speculations had been completely confirmed. There was no longer any doubt. At this moment, Lin Daohan could even feel the turmoil in his heart. On one hand, he was clearly aware that his nether-sieve divine light could only be maintained for a limited amount of time, so he had to end the battle quickly and strive to defeat Zhu in the shortest amount of time possible. On the other hand, he only hoped that this battle could last as long as possible, so that he could carefully analyze the abstruse principles and concepts in front of him and comprehend the endless profundities of heaven and earth. The former was a consideration of rationality and reality, while the latter was a natural yearning and curiosity of a cultivator towards the Tao of heaven and earth. A cultivator who could reach this stage would undoubtedly have an extremely strong curiosity and yearning towards the mysteries of heaven and earth. However, at this moment, Lin Daohan could only forcefully suppress this thought, maintain his rationality and calmness, and attack Zhu. Although the Golden Nirvana Bridge was powerful, under the deduction of the Tao-changing talisman, Lin Daohan still seized the opportunity to avoid the strong and attack the weak. He did not fight with force, but sought the most suitable way to break it. He suddenly struck out with his palm. The power was fierce and vigorous, and in the middle of his palm, there was actually a swastika character flashing. In the past, when Buddhism was destroyed, a large number of secret teachings of Buddhism, including the Unmovable Buddha Sutra, flowed into Taishu Temple. Although Lin Daohan did not practice, he had read a lot. At this moment, under the flashing of the Tao-changing talisman, he actually mastered it, and as his mana revolved, he naturally activated the supernatural power of Buddhism. As he pushed his palm forward, the void actually lit up with specks of incense. The tiny sparks lit up between heaven and earth, densely packed, numbering in the billions. They were as small as corn, but they were extremely clear. Within these specks of sparks, there were pious chanting of Buddha. If one looked closely, each speck of sparks seemed to be an independent small world. In these innumerable small worlds, many figures appeared. There were gray-haired old women, pregnant women, rich and powerful women, ignorant children. There were all kinds of people, and there was not a single one. However, all of them had one thing in common: they were all softly chanting, "My Buddha is merciful." The endless power of incense seemed small, but as vast as the sea. They gathered together, forming a unique and majestic power. The power of incense gathered, turning into golden lamps in the void, and the Buddha's light shone on the world. Under the illumination of the lamps, the golden Pramitha bridge shook slightly, and the halos that enveloped it showed signs of solidifying and stagnating. With such a disturbance, the supernatural power of the golden Pramitha bridge suddenly showed signs of weakness. And Lin Daohan did not stop, activating a further attack towards Zhu Yi on the bridge. Zhu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. At the end of the day, Buddhism is about cultivating oneself, not worshipping. It's just that people cannot cultivate and sink into the sea of bitterness. Life is full of difficulties, so the desire for others to save them is born, and this is the wrong path. Understanding oneself, everyone can become a Buddha and work hard to improve oneself. Everyone is like a dragon, and you want to use the power of incense to disrupt the general trend of humanity, but how can you do it? His feet stepped on the golden Pramitha bridge, and his voice was as loud as the sky, echoing throughout the universe. So, what is not yours will not be yours. You used the divine light of creation to forcefully take my talisman of E, but it's just an empty shell. The radiance of the golden Pramitha bridge suddenly brightened again, and rays of light shone on the world. Countless figures stood side by side on the bridge, and together, they let out deafening shouts, forming a rolling tide all the way forward. The Buddha's light in the void did not dim down, and in the world of incense that gathered into the Buddha's light, the expressions of the people who were chanting and kneeling in worship gradually changed. They were no longer pious, but their Buddha nature was more abundant, as if they had received a blow to the head, and their hearts were enlightened. Regardless of whether they were men or women, young or old, virtuous or foolish, everyone's face more or less revealed a peaceful and quiet smile. Their eyes were clear, and from the inside out, there seemed to be a Buddha's light emitting from them. The Buddha's light became brighter, but it could not continue to affect the golden Pramitha bridge. The expanding golden rainbow stretched across heaven and earth, and it collided head-on with Lin Daohan's next attack, making it impossible for him to take another step forward. Lin Daohan looked at this scene with a calm expression, and he shook his head slightly. In the end, it still doesn't work? Lin Daohan was not disappointed that his Buddhist incense had failed to disrupt the golden Pramitha bridge's momentum. What he was concerned about was that streams of air were surging around Zhu Yi's return to void stage Dharma body, and a great force was added to his body, causing his aura to soar. Above Zhu Yi's head, another Taoist talisman of changes appeared. In the hands of his return to void stage Dharma body, another scroll gradually appeared, and the words Book of Changes were written on the cover. Lin Daohan's eyes flashed slightly. Under normal circumstances, if his opponent tried to condense and cast a new divine ability, he would not create a new one. The three armies can take over the commander, but an ordinary man can't. He shook his head and sighed, "Ez, your Tao of completion is indeed extraordinary." As he spoke, Lin Daohan's body turned, and the body formed by his Yuan Shen suddenly changed. It was as if he had turned into a huge talisman. Rays of light around the talisman extended into the distance, into the void, and then the talisman started to spin. As the mystic light circulated, it gradually formed a huge vortex, and from the center of the vortex, a majestic light pillar shot out from it. The divine runes and talismans that filled the sky gathered in the light pillar, and they turned into small talisman arrays. These talisman arrays then condensed together and operated together, guiding the surrounding spiritual chi of the great path of heaven and earth. With it as the center, they all rotated together. Wherever the light pillar passed, it swept through the void, and it dissolved the power of Zhu Yi's art of destruction. But at the same time, the golden Pramitha bridge stretched across the sky, and it had already landed on the vortex. Chapter 1451. The golden bridge of the Pramitha bridge turned into a long rainbow, crossing the void and landing on the whirlpool. Suppressed by the golden bridge of the Pramitha bridge, the rotation of the whirlpool suddenly became sluggish, and the magnificent light pillar lost its luster. After a pause, the whirlpool suddenly turned in the opposite direction. The huge whirlpool, which had a vast area, quickly converged into a point, turning into an inconspicuous speck of light and drifting away. As the Tao-changing talisman flickered above Zhu Yi's head, he could see where the speck of light went. The golden bridge of the Pramitha bridge seemed to be omnipresent, extending infinitely and continuing to chase after the speck of light. The light continued to shine between heaven and earth. The two sides, one chasing the other, were entangled in the void of the spirit sea. On the primeval golden lamp, the white tiger great sage was no longer crouching. He stared at the flowing light in the sky and said, "I already knew that EZ had such a cultivation. But this is the first time that I've seen Lin Daohan's true strength. He is quite extraordinary." Yang Qing nodded and said, "This is under the condition that his dim sifting divine light can't be used against second senior brother. He can still contend with second senior brother's Permitha bridge." Lin Daohan's cultivation base had been raised by the Taishu mark to roughly the same level as his own Dharma-ending realm cultivation base. Even without the Taishu sage temple by his side, Lin Daohan's strength could still fight against Dharma-ending realm demons, and he might even be able to win. Such strength was enough to amaze the world. Lin Feng looked at this scene and couldn't help but smile. Other than Shenmen Tianzong, all the top geniuses who had reached the primordial soul realm in the human cultivation world in recent years had encountered Zhu. In the past, Zhu Hongwu, who was in the Dao-fusing realm, could fight against strong demons in the first tribulation stage with his bare hands. Now Lin Daohan could do the same, but he still encountered Zhu. Seeing this, Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Is this also a manifestation of good luck? Yang Qing stared at the sky for a moment. His divine light of creation can't work. If the stalemate continues for a long time, he will eventually fall into a disadvantageous position. Second senior brother isn't someone who will give his opponent a chance to turn the tables. He turned to look at Lin Feng. Comparatively speaking, third senior brother, Lin Feng smiled faintly. Tianhao is holding the line for him. Moreover, I have some confidence in your third senior brother. This disciple naturally has confidence in third senior brother, said Yang Qing. It's just that the king of the underworld has always been crafty and unpredictable. However, since Tianhao is also here, there shouldn't be any problems. After all, the king of the underworld was heavily injured by your hands. As she spoke, Yang Qing raised her head and looked up at the independent gray domain space. Master, that place. Lin Feng's god of war clone smiled and said, "It's fine." As he spoke, thousands of the great path light streams between heaven and earth in the spiritual sea suddenly merged strangely, turning into an extremely magnificent and dazzling light belt that stretched between heaven and earth. The great path light stream trembled violently, stirring up the wind and clouds in all directions. Even Zhu Yi Lin Daohan, Yu Hongyan, the heavenly wolf great sage, the monkey and golden cicada, who were in the process of fighting, looked askance at it. This was because this light stream was different from the usual ones. It actually showed a distinct color, which was as black as ink. In this pitch-black light stream, one could vaguely see light shadows floating up and down, turning into images of all living beings. There were powerful dragons, kunpangs, taotais, and other great demons and fierce beasts. There were ordinary humans, ordinary birds and beasts, flowers, birds, fish, and insects. There were towering trees, low shrubs, vast grasslands, and wetland moss. All kinds of living beings emerged from it. Then, they all withered and died in an instant, leaving only white bones and desolation on the ground. However, this scene did not give off an eerie and terrifying feeling. Instead, it made people feel that it was only natural. Their hearts were filled with peace, as if they were watching the home that all living beings should return to, eternal peace. Light shadows appeared one after another. In the end, even the seemingly lifeless mountains, rivers, sand, stones, wind, rain, and clouds seemed to be bestowed with life. Then, they entered a state of death, eternal slumber. Yang Qing's eyes focused. This is the great heaven primordial world's Tao of death. It is the ultimate manifestation of the Tao of death in the spiritual sea. It has condensed into a physical form. Then, he turned his gaze to the other side. He saw the great path light streams vibrate together in the void. Then, thousands of light streams strangely fused together, turning into a magnificent light belt. It also revealed an obvious milky white color. Within that light belt, light shadows also appeared continuously. It was the complete opposite of the scene in the black light belt. Everything was full of vitality, reviving and growing. New lives were constantly being born. Yang Qing's breathing quickened slightly. He stretched out his right hand and opened his palm. There was a tiny piece of sand there. It was extremely inconspicuous, but it seemed as if Yang Qing had to use all his strength to hold it steadily in his palm. He took a deep breath and regained his calmness. He stared at the two thick bands of light in front of him, one black and one white, fluctuating ceaselessly in heaven and earth. This is the real fight between Third Brother and the Emperor of Underworld. Lin Feng smiled. Tianhao has blocked his path from the outside, and little Lin has blocked his path from the back. There is no way forward, and there are pursuers behind. It will be difficult for him to escape this time. If he had a choice, the king of the underworld would naturally not be interested in fighting with Wang Lin in the spiritual sea. Although the situation seemed to be changing drastically because of the crack in the Dead Sea, the king of the underworld, who had already been seriously injured by Lin Feng, did not intend to continue getting involved. To him, the situation was no longer out of his control. It was completely out of his plans. There was no need to take any risks at this time. Lin Feng was still in the spiritual sea. Even if he gained the upper hand in the fight with Wang Lin, there was no benefit to speak of. Moreover, he had been injured by Lin Feng, and his strength had been seriously damaged. It was not suitable for him to continue fighting with others. However, Shi Tianhao, who was cruising in the periphery, blocked him with the Great Celestial Wheel. In a sense, when he left the Netherworld Sea, Shi Tianhao had actually chased him all the way into the spiritual sea. After being blocked by Shi Tianhao and slightly delayed, Wang Lin, who was behind him, had already caught up. Shi Tianhao activated the Blue Sky All Heavens formation. The Sky City suppressed, and the Great Celestial Wheel hung high. It directly blocked off the space-time in front of him, blocking the king of the underworld's path. Although his face was pale and his aura was much weaker, the king of the underworld still had a majestic aura. Seeing that the space-time was sealed, he had no time to break out if he could not defeat Wang Lin. Therefore, he simply stopped in his tracks and stood in mid-air. He looked around at the realm that had turned into a blue sky. He didn't say anything, and his gaze finally fell on Wang Lin. The young man had a cold expression. He was dressed in purple, and his long white hair was loose behind him. His gaze was indifferent. The king of the underworld stared at Wang Lin and sized him up. Suddenly he smiled. It's not without reason that N and the others, as well as the disciples and disciples of Samsara, see you as a thorn in their side. Wang Lin did not speak. However, with him as the center, the scenery of the world suddenly changed. The blue sky formed by the Blue Sky All Heavens formation instantly turned into the dusky yellow springs. Wisps of black deathly aura spread in all directions. Silently, the yellow springs river of forgetfulness flowed. A bridge of forgetfulness was erected on it, leading to the pitch-black Emperor Yan's hall. The door of Emperor Yan's hall opened. Two light wheels, one black and one white, one life and one death, spun rapidly. In the depths of the hall, a mirror-like stone stood erect, reflecting layers of unimaginable scenes. And on this stone of 3 lives, there was an existence of light. It was faintly discernible and was filled with a mysterious aura of power. The king of the underworld's gaze swept across the Yellow Springs Road, the river of forgetfulness, the bridge of forgetfulness, Emperor Yan's hall, the stone of 3 lives, and finally landed on the hazy light above the stone of 3 lives. Seeing this light, the king of the underworld's gaze wavered a little. Slowly he nodded. You have a good master. He walked leisurely in the air as though he was on a field trip. He walked into the 9 hells world formed by Wang Lin's spiritual power. To others, the Yellow Springs world was a burial ground. But to the king of the underworld, it was as though he was walking on flat ground, relaxed and content. Bone claws stretched out from the foundation of the Yellow Springs Road. They were originally going to grab the king of the underworld's body, but halfway there, they all prostrated themselves. The torrential Yellow Springs' true water, which purified everything in the world, came to a complete stop in front of the king of the underworld. The entire river of forgetfulness was like a frozen glacier. The king of the underworld did not step onto the still river of forgetfulness. Instead, he slowly walked onto the bridge of forgetfulness. As he walked, the green-black stone bridge was completely silent, without the slightest reaction. He came to the front of Emperor Yan's hall. In his eyes, black and white light alternated. Within Emperor Yan's hall, the two wheels of light, one black and one white, had originally been spinning rapidly. At this moment, their speed also slowed down, until they finally came to a stop. The king of the underworld passed through the hall and came before the stone of 3 lives. He took a look. Is it mainly because of Rulai Taoist? He formed a seal with both hands and then struck out. A beam of white light flew out, and then rapidly turned into a multicolored light. In this multicolored light, one could see countless lights and shadows alternating, revealing the myriad changes of the mortal world. Many carvings vaguely showed the city walls and countryside, the joys and sorrows of life, love and hate, and the countless entanglements of the mortal world. Thousands of mortal worlds and thousands of karma appeared at the same time, shrouding the stone of 3 lives. It temporarily blinded the power to predict the future of karma. If this was the future star-glazed Buddha Lord's 3 lives karma curse, it would be difficult for the king of the underworld to be so blinded. However, his opponent was Wang Lin, and the result was different. Even though Wang Lin had the stone of 3 lives and could still sort out the thousands of threads and clues of karma, it was not something that could be accomplished in a single move. For a battle of their cultivation level, countless changes happened in an instant. If there was a slight delay, the present would become the past, and the future would become the past. After blinding the stone of 3 lives, the king of the underworld lifted his head to look at the blurry light above. His face revealed a look of deep thought. And at this moment, the king of the underworld's heart stirred. He retracted his gaze and looked behind the stone of 3 lives. There, a figure sat on the throne. He was dressed in a black dragon robe and had a flat crown on his head. He looked like the lord of the underworld. His facial features were no different from Wang Lin's, but he was cold and dignified, looking down on the common people. He looked a little like the king of the underworld. When the king of the underworld saw this, he felt a little strange. He smiled and said, "Come down." As he spoke, Wang Lin, who was sitting on the throne and wearing the crown on his head, suddenly became unsteady. It was as though he was about to fall from the throne. His appearance looked a little comical. It was as though a fake emperor on a stage had met the real son of heaven who had coincidentally arrived. But when his spiritual sense and spiritual power came into contact with Wang Lin's figure, the king of the underworld could not laugh. Emperor Yan's hall shook at this moment. The black and white wheels of light that had been almost still started to rotate again. Chapter 1452. As Emperor Yan's hall shook, the space began to shrink rapidly, forming a shackle that trapped the king of the underworld within. As for Wang Lin, who had fallen from the throne, his figure had disappeared, as though he had melded into Emperor Yan's hall. The king of the underworld turned his head abruptly, his gaze piercing through Emperor Yan's hall and looking at the outside world. He saw that the road to the underworld, the river of forgetfulness, and the bridge of helplessness that he had crossed previously were also shaking at this moment. A few figures suddenly appeared, and they all looked like Wang Lin. A solitary and stubborn young man walked on the road to the Yellow Springs. Apart from his resolute expression, he looked ordinary. In his silent and stubborn eyes, there was still a pure and innocent heart. In the face of difficulties, there was also yearning and longing for the future. An expressionless youth had his eyes tightly shut. He did not speak, did not move, and stood in the river of hell. He was like a stubborn rock, but also a part of the river. His entire person seemed to be hovering between life and death. An ordinary and leisurely-looking young man with a calm expression and a smile stood on the bridge of helplessness, as though he was admiring the scenery around him. The stone of 3 lives in front of the king of the underworld suddenly lit up, and the colorful light that shrouded it dissipated. On the mirror-like surface of the stone of 3 lives, a figure appeared. It was also the figure of Wang Lin. This was an elderly Wang Lin. His face was lined with wrinkles, and the marks of time were etched on it. Only his eyes were quiet and deep. But no matter which Wang Lin it was, they all had one similarity. There was a vertical demonic mark between their brows. Seeing this demonic mark, the king of the underworld's eyes flashed. Primordial Demon Sutra, Primordial Heart Demon Concealment Curse? Although the king of the underworld had already perished in the ancient times when the primordial devil cult rose to its peak, he was not completely unaware of the outside world in the following years. His disciples, Taoist Reincarnation, Taoist Huang Quan, Taoist Yu Ming, and the master of the underworld hall, Su Anda, were also active in the vast thousand worlds. The king of the underworld knew a lot about the colossal world over the years, so he was no stranger to the primitive demon sect. However, at this moment, Wang Lin's technique seemed a little strange and unfamiliar. The king of the underworld sized him up seriously. You combined your spells and divine abilities with some existences and severed all of them into external bodies? Wang Lin did not reply. His real body was nowhere to be seen, and his avatars were forming hand seals together. Looking down into the abyss, it was as though looking up at a towering tower. Everything in the world was concentrated at the bottom of the abyss, on the tower. Turning into demons, they worshipped the bottom of the abyss and the top of the tower. The tip of Wang Lin's finger, the top of the tower, and the bottom of the abyss all became one at this moment. They were concentrated at a single point, and it was so heavy that it could not be any heavier. It triggered the power of the entire demonic abyss, and it was pointed at the king of the underworld's chest together. This was the pinnacle of martial mystique recorded in the Primordial Demon Sutra of the Primordial Demon Sect, the bow of all demons. This unexpected and sudden move completely overturned the king of the underworld's previous understanding of Wang Lin. Even with his cultivation base, he was caught off guard for a moment, and Wang Lin closed in on him with ease. At this time, even if he wanted to dodge, his body had already been suppressed by the bow of all demons. His entire body was involuntarily drawn towards the abyss, towards the top of the tower. However, the king of the underworld had dominated for a long time, and he was not easy to deal with. He simply stood where he was without moving, and a half-black, half-white underworld Dao fruit appeared in the air in front of his chest, right between Wang Lin's finger and his heart. Then, the Dao fruit suddenly exploded, turning into black streams of light that filled the sky. Netherworld Primordial Annihilation Curse. Seeing this, Wang Lin's eyes immediately erupted with a shocking light. In his left pupil, two beams of light, one black and one white, intersected, turning into a beam of light in the shape of a black and white cross, enveloping the king of the underworld from the void. Hit! With a light shout from Wang Lin, the heaven-defying fate-changing curse was activated, reversing the principles of karma and changing the past. Under the radiance of the black and white cross, the attack that had been blocked by the Netherworld Primordial Annihilation Curse still headed towards the king of the underworld's chest. The king of the underworld's eyes also flickered with flowing light, and he let out a long sigh. Before me, all is silent. Netherworld ritual was activated, and the three-tiered black altar was erected. Then, the life and death underworld Dao fruit was sacrificed within, and the altar shattered, turning into a silent black light that blocked in front of the king of the underworld. Because the Netherworld Primordial Annihilation Curse did not have the desired effect, the king of the underworld attacked a second time. Wang Lin's finger was almost about to touch the king of the underworld's chest, and the suppressive force made the heart of the king of the underworld feel numb. At the critical moment, the black light screen appeared between the two of them, narrowly blocking Wang Lin's bow of all demons. That demonic pattern was above the Tai Chi diagram, but it did not rotate along with the Tai Chi diagram. Instead, it remained vertical. The Tai Chi diagram continued to rotate. The Dharma and aura of dermic powers were not affected at all. Above Wang Lin's head, a hazy ball of light flashed. It was the same shape as the light on the stone of 3 lives earlier, and it caught the attention of the king of the underworld. At this moment, as the light swayed, a figure gradually swayed from within. Seeing that figure, the king of the underworld immediately frowned. A distant and unfamiliar sense of familiarity surged in his heart. As the Dharma and aura in the void continued to vibrate, the figure in the ball of light became clearer. Then, it gradually stepped out of the ball of light and arrived in this world. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.